People want to hear.
Everybody wants to hear the stories that we're talking about right now.
Exactly. What's up, folks? Sorry we're a little bit late. We got to talking back in the queue backstage. We're going to talk about the Keith Poche incident.
29th.
Shortly.
I'm sorry, I was wrong. 29th.
Okay,
so top 30.
Yeah. So that's
still a good finish.
Yeah, it's still a good solid finish.
Well, and especially in the opens, right?
Right.
That's I mean, there's 220 guys in there. That's rough.
Yeah, so he had to forfeit, the money and all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't think so the standings still say 29th, so I don't think it's official since he's put his appeal in. But we'll get to that here in a little bit.
Yeah, we're just kind of
we got Matt on tonight.
Yeah, so what's up, folks at home? Welcome to another episode of 10 Horse Mighty YouTube channel, Monday Night Live. It's good to see you here. Man, I'm hurting a little bit. I'm gonna moan just slightly. I've been off since last Thursday, so a week and a half off, and I had to go back to work today. I got a 6-day run at work, and
moment of silence.
Oh man, it's like super humid out there. There's no wind, and I'm sitting in a little mail truck, and just like
you see the back of my head
toaster oven
from yesterday.
Yeah, congratulations too for JB. His team just took the championship. Right?
Yeah, we won our tournament this weekend.
Yeah,
so
nice, good work, man.
It was a hard fought battle and lots of. We got a butt chewing after our first game on Saturday because there was not a lot of hustle and there was not a lot of get up and go. And
had to get them in line.
They 10-run every team they played after that.
Really?
So
put a little fire under their little butts.
That's right.
What age group?
So
is that?
they're 9.
Okay.
So most of them are 9, getting ready to turn 10 on their next birthday, and then my son is the little run of the team. He's 8, and he'll be 9 in June. Everybody else by 6 months he's the littlest and the youngest on the team. So
yeah.
He's my little firecracker. He's the leader of the team. Not by design. That's all him. He's the loudest one in the dugout. He's the fastest one on the team. He's cheering everybody on, getting everybody pumped up. And I have to get on to him because he tells everybody what they're doing wrong then too. So
really?
He likes to be, we call him Coach Keegan every once in a while. So
nice. Yeah, I'm just getting into that. I got a 4.5 and a 6.5-year-old. So the 6.5-year-old is just starting to get into he's eating up with sports. So soccer, and we got a little bit of everything. Football going on. My little guy's starting soccer. So it's going to be a summer full of cheering them on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you assume the coaching role, you no longer fish. You no longer do anything that you want to do. I just get to come on Monday nights and talk about fishing and dream about it all week.
I think I'm going to pass on the coaching role.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be fun. I'll let somebody else yell at the kids or get them going. And it was pretty funny actually, because this past year soccer was so much more laid back, and I feel like the parents would show up. There'd be like coolers. Everyone stood around just talking, having a good time. And then we got them into flag football, and it was like a whole different set of parents where it was like, what are you talking about? Like everyone is like screaming at the kids and the coaches. And it was I played sports my entire life, and I don't really remember what went on in the stands with the parents at all. But in this case, it was like, whoa, soccer parents, much more laid back. Football parents, like much more my kid's going pro type thing.
Right? Yeah.
The one thing I will say as a coach, I don't hear a lot of the noise. I hear noise, right? But I don't hear what it actually is. I get the lowdown after the game from my wife, who's sitting there listening to all of it, hearing it all. But once I get on that field, it's kind of like going into a tournament. There's a bunch of white noise going on.
Yeah.
And it's all background. You're focused on the task at hand. So I'm able to turn that off, and I don't listen to my
stepdad. My daughters played softball for a couple of years, and they were just starting to get good, and they had a coach that was a little too harsh on them.
Yeah.
And so they bailed out. They couldn't, it got to where it wasn't fun. But my stepdad, my mom told him he couldn't come to any more games because he was just very loud, yelling at the refs a couple times, and he just got too elevated, and he wasn't able to contain himself. And I understand it gets personal when you got a grandchild out there and stuff, but It's just, they were like 8 years old.
That's my mom.
They were like
That's
8
my
years
mom.
old. I'm like, it's not a professional game. They're just kids. So
yeah, I don't want to be that dad. Like, as much as I am that dad, I don't want to be that dad, which is why I don't want to be coach.
Yeah, for what it did for me, because I started coaching like rec ball, and I got voluntold that I was going to coach, and it was partially my fault because I felt bad for the guy. It was a dad and his like 11 or 12-year-old son out there trying to wrangle a bunch of 6-year-olds up, and none of them could catch, none of them could throw. They were all, really, really green. And his wife came over and she's like, "Hey, do you want to help coach?" I'm like, "No, like not no, but hell no. There's no way in the world that I want to do this." And then I stepped out on the field one day just to kind of wrangle something up. And he's like, "Hey, can you come pitch?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I'll pitch to the boys." And then one thing led to the other.
You're a natural.
It reinvigorated like all the competitive juices that I remember playing ball when I was a kid. And now it's all in the past now. That's all I do now.
You're all in.
Fully indebted into it.
I think that's why a lot of us tournament fish too. We're
Absolutely.
pretty competitive growing up, and it's as much as I'd like to think I could still play basketball like I used to, fishing has filled that void for me.
Yep.
How'd you, I've never asked you this, I don't think. How did you get into fishing? Did you have like your dad or grandpa or something get you into that?
Yeah, man, it's so I grew up in Chicago, the north side of Chicago. Our summer vacations every year was to the Hayward, Wisconsin area, so northern Wisconsin. We'd go for 2 weeks. It would be my family and then 2 sets of cousins and my grandparents. So we'd rent 4 cabins at a straight up old school fishing resort. And we would just, for 2 weeks, I mean, we'd fish in the morning, play on the beach during the day, do whatever, and then fish in the evening. And my grandpa was when I say hardcore fisherman, he was very much hardcore in terms of he wanted to fish, but he was a Johnson silver minnow, Uncle Josh pork frog on the back. That was his bait. That's what he threw. And he fished all day. Like, that was what he did when we went on vacation. And that kind of got my dad going a little bit, and that got me hooked. But there was no reason why. I think about this a lot. There's no reason why I should have ever really caught the fishing bug other than we'd go on these vacations. But it just turned into something where, my grandpa was big into it. My dad was kind of getting into it. But when I say into it, I'm not talking tournament angling. I'm just saying that was what we did on vacation. My dad really found it relaxing. He kind of started throwing like a rubber worm on a Texas rig. And, one thing just kind of snowballed to the other. My dad kind of caught onto it a little bit. And next thing you know, we're getting the big Bassmaster or the Bass Pro Master catalog. If you guys remember that, like, you'd get like the 1989 Master catalog, and it was like that thick. And I just remember I would flip through it as a kid and like memorize the pages. So if you were like, where's the, at that time, whatever, the Rebel We Are, right? Or the Storm Chug Bug, I could find it and tell you like exactly what color everything came in. So there was just something in me that just kind of grabbed that. And because the fishing became more of a relaxing thing, I guess, for my dad and my mom, they ended up buying a little cabin on a tiny little 60-acre lake in northwestern Indiana. And we would go there almost every weekend in the summer. And that was just like, kind of where I would start fishing. And we had a paddle boat, and the paddle boat led to a 14-foot rowboat, which led to a 16-foot sea nymph. And that was kind of what gave me the bug. I mean, I won the local lake tournament when I was like 12 or 13 out of the paddle boat using a live basket that I hung over the side of the boat to weigh our 3 fish. So it was just something where, I didn't have any like tournament anglers in my family. I just kind of grabbed it and ran with it. And when I got to college, I met a good buddy of mine, and we kind of grew into tournament fishing together. And that, we started fishing our first couple tournaments during college. by the time we graduated college, we were fishing 25 tournaments a year out of his boat, which was nothing special. And then I ended up buying an 18-foot Skeeter in 2003, the year after I graduated college. And it really has snowballed.
I remember go back to that Bass Pro Shops Master Catalog. I remember when I didn't even know that there were other fishing rods and reels. I thought the, the Johnny Morris,
like the Pro
whatever, the carbon
bionic blade.
I thought that was like I mean, I knew there was like ugly sticks and some of the lower grade, but I thought that was the best stuff out there for years and years. And then I started seeing, I don't know what happened, but I started venturing off and looking at other stuff, and I didn't trust it because I was so like, my mind was so focused on Bass Pro Shops being the pinnacle of whatever. Yeah. And they make good stuff too. But it took me a while to realize that there are a lot of other manufacturers out there that make really good products. And
well, Matt mentioned the 1989 catalog, and I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, Dad still has that, probably in a very giant stack of them. Yeah, and he will not throw any of them away. For some reason, they're going to be collector's editions one day.
It's fun to go back and look at the prices.
Right,
of some of those.
Right.
Like, what did this cost?
That's usually what I do at Christmas. I go and grab like the last one in the stack, and it'll be a 90s model. You pull it out, and it's like, oh, well, that was really nice to pay $1.99 for a jig back then.
Yeah, or you could buy a bass boat with everything on it for $30,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, even less than that. Honestly, I kept every magazine I had, and maybe if you guys remember too, if you had like a subscription to Bassmaster or Fishing Facts or In Fisherman, some of those, the iconic fishing magazines back in the time, they used to come with a card, and the card would have like 100 circles in it, and each circle would have a number, and that number would relate to like one of the ads, right? So if it was, say, Storm had a little quarter-page ad, it might be number 65. You could go fill that circle out on the card and send that in. And then they would send you like their that year's catalog for Storm. You get a Storm catalog in the mail, and it was all free. And I used to fill that stupid thing out all the time as a kid. And I had stacks of catalogs, and I wish I still had them because they were really cool to go back through. And, a lot of them would have, like in the case of Storm, if the old Wiggleworts were in there, right? So if you like to collect Wiggleworts, you'd have every color that was offered, which was like 100 different colors. And I had stacks and stacks of those. And then a couple of years after college, I ended up selling them because those Storm catalogs I was getting like $35 for on eBay. And I wish at this point I had kept them all, because it was, as a record keeper, you could go back and look at all the colors that were offered. And it was a really cool thing to have, and I wish I still had a bunch of them.
I remember, I've totally forgot about the little oval things that you're talking about, but as soon as you started talking about that, I remember that 100%. That's crazy. Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah, we've come a long ways in terms of the sport transitioning from like magazine based, right? Like when In Fisherman and Fishing Facts and Bassmaster were like the sole driving force of marketing in the sport to, I'm not going to say they're not relevant anymore, because I still get some of them, but I don't think the print, if I had to guess, I'd say the print aspect of the sport is nowhere near as good as it used to be.
Well, you look at the Bassmaster magazine, and Dad always talks about this. It's a lot of regurgitated stuff from years and years and years ago that it just keeps turning back, but it's all relevant stuff, right? It's going on today, but they're also getting thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. When you have a stuff, like you said, even the Master catalog, it was that thick back in the day, and now it's about half of that when you get one. Yeah. And it still shows up at all of our houses every year. You get the big Christmas sale catalog and all that. And I remember as a kid, you circle the stuff in there that you wanted and
dog ear the pages. Yeah. I used to get that. Remember when Bassmasters used to send, you could buy the fishing diary.
Yeah.
Where you could write down all your trips and stuff. And it was like a fishing log.
Yeah.
I got a couple of them over there.
Yeah. If I remember right, they would send it to you. And if you didn't send it back, they charged you for it.
Yeah, it might have been one of those gimmicks. It might have been one of those like, we'll send it to you, and if you didn't order it, we're going to charge you for it if we don't get it back. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it could have been. I used to really use that. I used to document every fishing trip I'd go on, and like, water temp, wind direction, how many bites I had doing this, and what bait I got it. And it wasn't just me. I got that actually because my dad was doing it. And probably 2 years ago, I was up at they've since sold that house in Indiana and bought a cabin up in northern Wisconsin where they spend most of the summer. And I was up there one day and he's like, I'm going to throw this out. And it was like 3 years worth of his logs, like how many fish he caught every trip out. I'm like, you can't throw that out. I'm taking that. And, it's funny to go back and read it. Cause for me, I feel like I've advanced so much since the time I was, 16 or 18 years old. And I go back and I read it and I'm like, you're a dummy. You should have been doing this and not doing what I did. But it's all good. It's all good keepsake. And I love having that stuff.
T. Harris says he has almost every Bass Pro Master catalog from the 1980s.
Wow.
To the present. That's nice. I had some for quite a while, and I didn't. I think our last house cleaning deal that we did, about every 3 years, we just clean up. I think the very last time we did it, which was about a year and a half ago, I got rid of them.
You just got tired of tripping over them and
I had about 6 or 7 or 8 of them, maybe. I certainly didn't have everything from the 80s, but
right. I know Dad donated a bunch of his old Bassmasters to like the veterans home. A lot of those the older folks in there. You get tired of reading Better Homes and Garden magazine. You want to read something that's got a little more punch to it. So he would donate that. My grandpa always donated old fishing rods to the veterans so they could go to the lake, and they had a day that he took them out there and went fishing. So cool. all of this conversation just sparks like a whole host of memories from growing up. So
yeah, well, I assume we're all roughly the same age. So we all kind of grew up in that same, that same generation. But I still definitely have stacks and stacks of old Bassmaster, old Fishing Facts, and Fisherman, like all the catalogs I get as a kid. Because that's the other thing. Like I feel like through grade, you guys call it over there, we call it the grade school, 1st through 8th grade, we'd have magazine drives. Did you do that when you were younger?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so like, that the magazine drive would come out, and the magazine I'd always choose was some sort of fishing related magazine. So for years upon years, I was getting them, and I still have most of those old magazines in various places. But it is fun to go back and kind of read through them, and some of the information is extremely relevant, and some of it is like we've really advanced pretty far in the sport.
Well, and some of that advancement you talk about has been in the last 4 or 5 years.
Oh yeah,
where we've learned how fish behave because of forward facing.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's cool to see something like the jigworm, shaky head, jigworm, Ned rig, whatever you want to call it. That's a lot of that stuff's been around. Like Al Linder, they were fishing that stuff way before long time ago. And it just kind of resurges, and they change the name, and it's a new technique,
Yeah, it really does seem to like a little bit changes on the hook, or the worm changes a little bit and it gets a whole new name. And it's like, okay, well, this is really similar to like the jig worm, like you're saying. And now it's called the Ned rig, or, something along those lines. Right. But for the most part, there is it's kind of like people say with the fashion industry, right? Like things come back around after time, whether like bell bottoms are coming back, it kind of feels like. And I feel like the same could be said for the fishing industry. We're so much about cycling through the hot techniques that by the time you cycle through 2 or 3 techniques, you kind of get back to where we were. And it's just a little bit different than what it was. But whether that helps us from a fishing standpoint or not, I don't know. But, it's one of those things that we definitely see techniques come and go that are kind of called the same thing when they come back, or called something different, but it's still the same technique.
Well, it had to be a good technique if it comes back in a different form, fashion, and name. I mean, it's essentially the same thing. Like It still works. We just forgot about it.
The Johnson Silver Minnow still hasn't made a comeback.
I know. Are you?
No, I'm not. I'm not the guy. I'm not the guy to bring it back. But.
Dude, I'm gonna do some videos on it this summer. Actually,
Yeah.
I was gonna do it last year and I didn't make it happen, but I still think there's a time and place for the silver minnow, and it's probably one of the best northern pike lures ever made. So, like, I know you guys don't have that down by you, but the northern pike in the northern part of the world love a Johnson silver minnow.
Does it hold up well to the trauma?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Better than a frog for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a metal spoon with a big hook on it that's been soldered on, so it doesn't go anywhere. But it is, I mean, that's what I grew up fishing for bass too. The lake that we would vacation was a chain of 5 or 6 lakes, and all the lakes were connected by a shallow marsh area that was full of like silver dollar pads. So that was like where we would spend a lot of our time, was just fishing a Johnson silver minnow with a Uncle Josh pork frog over the top of it. But they definitely still work. I mean, any place you consider throwing a frog these days, you could get away with a silver minnow. I actually think if you were a ledge fisherman, a Johnson silver minnow could be a phenomenal bait for you. That would be a good cross between a spoon and like some sort of I don't know, a scrounger head type deal that you could kind of slow retrieve down deep. I would do that. I just don't have the ledge lakes up here to really test it on.
It would be great on
Darius on here. He lives on Kentucky Lake.
It'd be great on forward facing too, because it's a big chunk of water that you could see it. So that sparked another one. We pull up to a random ramp at Chickamauga, practicing for a BFL regional, and there's a guy on the bank, and he's, we're getting ready, and he's circling around the riprap peninsula that comes out, and he's got like a 12-inch worm on the back of a Johnson silver minnow, and he's just woof across those mats and just winding it in. I look at my buddy, I'm like, dude, we're gonna look ridiculous walking into the next tackle store when a 10-pounder blows up on this thing right outside of here. We're gonna be asking for every Johnson silver minnow that we can find,
and a 12-inch worm to go on the back.
Well, we had plenty of those because we were at Gunnersville. We
Yeah.
just didn't have the Johnson silver minnows. It's not something that I carry in my tackle box. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's the best thing ever, but I bet you there are people still catching them pretty good. I mean, that's the same. You hear people joke about like the hula popper and the jitterbug. I'll tell you what, those baits, you can smash them on both those baits, even though I would bet you 95% of today's current bass anglers don't use them.
True story. Hold on.
Okay.
This just happened. We bring up the jitterbug. This is fresh news. This just happened the other day. I was over at the local lake, and I had to leave early, and I was talking to some guy that was pulling out a little, like a 14-foot John boat with a legit 9.8 on it and trolling motor, and we were talking, and I asked him how he did out there. He's like, yeah, I caught them pretty good. And I said, really? He goes, yeah, they were really hitting the jitterbug. He said, I caught several, around 4 pounds on the jitterbug. So that guy's still fishing the jitterbug.
Yeah.
And I remember that being.
But how much different is those new JDM baits that have these wings on them? Well,
that's totally different.
But it's not. It's doing the same thing on top of the water.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I mean, it's causing
similar.
that disturbance as you reel it. It's just in a different.
I've got one of the musky jitterbug.
It's in a prettier version of it.
I've got the musky jitterbug.
Is that the jointed one?
No, it's really long. It's got 3 hooks on it. I'll show it to you in a little bit. It's still in the package. It's a big one.
Dude, the last time I was at Lake Erie, we went out of Sandusky Bay, and man, I was way out there in the middle of the lake, and I looked down at one point, and a little black jitterbug goes floating by me, and I was like, you think, I don't even think of it ever as a smallmouth bait, and I know there's a lot of largemouth in Lake Erie too, but I mean, I was probably 10 miles from the nearest piece of land, and a little black jitterbug went by. So I grabbed it and I threw it in the boat and put it with the rest of them. But I mean, I did a video last year fishing. I don't know if you've seen this, but Arbogast, who has the hula popper and the jitterbug, came out with like really high end versions of them, like cool ass, excuse my language, really cool paint schemes, like very neat feathered treble hooks. and they sell them individually or in a pack. So I bought some of both, and I went out and I smashed the smallmouth on the hula popper. I never got around to making a video with the jitterbug, but they just look really good compared to the older kind of standard jitterbug version. So it's something just to look at, because they're still relatively cheap, but they're pretty cool looking.
Oh yeah, those are nice.
Those
Looking
are
at it right now.
Yeah, those are wild.
Okay.
Yeah.
I might have to pick one up. What's the price point? $8?
$8.
Yeah.
They stepped the game up. Let's put it that way.
Jointed.
Yeah.
Got like lightning bolt backs or crackle backs.
I wonder,
on.
that looks like it might be a little tricky to cast, maybe. I don't know. Have you casted one in a while? Like that little cup, does it catch a lot of wind or?
No, it still casts pretty good.
Okay. It's a fairly heavy bait.
You throw it on a 303, 333 Zebco, or you
Zebco 33.
The class, this 33 Classic or whatever it was called. No,
10-pound blue strand. Hey, it works.
Dude, we should bring back like an old school tournament where all you can throw is like a Zebco 33, a jitterbug, some Stren line. Yeah. Do they still make Stren? Stren's not around, are they?
I don't know. I haven't seen it recently. And another
big
rule.
Game, come on. No, you got to step up to the game a little bit.
The rod can have no more than 3 guides on it too.
And it has to be a pistol grip, and it can't
no
be over
inserts.
6.
Yeah. No inserts on the guides.
Dude, I gotta make a pistol grip rod. God, I haven't thrown. I think the last pistol grip rod I had was a Bass Pro Shops Bionic blade. Like I think,
really?
I think that was because you were talking about the rods before. I worked my way up from the Tourney Special, Bionic blade. I think I went to the Extreme Pro Qualifier and then the Johnny Moore Signature Series.
We've been down the same path, man. We walked the same exact road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the best part about it was the return policy. And I don't know what it is now, but the return policy was like, if you broke one, you could take it back to the store and they'd give you a brand new one.
Yeah.
And it might still be that way. I don't know anymore, but that was, for me. I mean, that was, we used to get the master catalog, and that was a huge thing. And then I think one of the first Bass Pro Shop stores that they built outside of Springfield was the Gurnee, Illinois one. So just outside of Chicago. And man, we'd take a trip there, and it was like, I was just, I was a kid in a toy store.
It was the combos that sucked you in. So you had a rod, and then you had a reel, and if you bought them together, you saved $30 or something,
Yeah.
And it usually ended up bumping you up to the next price point or something somehow. They're sneaky.
Yep.
And,
I remember my first non-hand-me-down that I got as a gift, and it was a Bionic blade pistol grip 6.6, and I thought I was big timing.
I think that's the rod I had.
Big timing. Medium or medium heavy. Yep. Whipping a spinnerbait like nobody's business. If I grabbed one of those today and set the hook, I'd break my wrist. I promise. Like, there is no way.
I just want to try casting it again because I'm so accustomed to two-handed casting that I feel like the pistol grip would just not work right anymore.
You'd be grabbing a little nub on the end.
It'd be weird.
I probably would try to do it.
I've watched some of
weird.
those.
I mean, do you guys cast one-handed? Because
I
feel like even now, I feel like when I see people casting one-handed, or sometimes I'll do it in videos. Like I had a bum wrist for like a month last year, and I'd be doing a video and I'd be one-handed casting, and I'm like, that just looks weird to me. Like I'm so two-handed now that
you're really good skippers. You look at like a Dion or a Gerald Swindle. You watch them and their backhanded rolls one hand and full-handed rolls one hand skips, and they don't double grip. My dad's same way. He doesn't two-hand anything. It's like you have all that rod to give you leverage, and you still just one-hander.
If I'm just going down a grass line casting a swim jig or something, usually my first couple casts, then I'll start getting kind of lazy and just doing one hand. I'm not.
My lazy
really,
is like 2 fingers on the butt just to give that little snap.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, a lot of times I don't even grab it. I just kind of use the bottom hand to kind of help guide the roll of the cast.
Right.
Like a lot of times I don't actually grab it, with this hand. I'm just kind of open face, just pushing off of my hand, I guess.
It's when you really want to like get that trap
cranking,
out there where you
deep cranking, you're really getting after it and throwing it way out there. Maybe Carolina rig. Well,
you're so accustomed to catching those big muskie, you got to have those big rods, right? You got to.
Oh, I got a bunch of big rods. I'm actually experimenting with some musky rods for heavy flipping to see how that works. Like when I say big musky rods, they're lighter action musky rods, but they're still like 8.5 to 9 foot rods that I feel like would be really good for flipping. And I haven't dialed in which one I like yet, but I think there's something to be said for some of those really big rods being good for some of your heavy flipping mat type stuff.
So like punching or just flipping?
No, yeah, like punching. So, I mean, we've got topped out milfoil up here. If you go down to Florida where you get some of those really heavy mats of hyacinth. But like this year down in Florida, we had, they've had all the hurricanes and stuff. And it was like the mats were so thick. I mean, I was throwing 3-ounce weights and still not getting through in a lot of cases. But a 3-ounce weight on a traditional flipping stick, even a flipping stick rated for heavy stuff is still kind of heavy. So a lot of the musky stuff is rated for like 4 to 12 ounces, right? So they're just heavier rods. But some of the new stuff, like I do a lot of stuff with Mudhole and MHX, and they've spent a lot of time really working on big game rods, musky and pike rods. And through my building of those, it's like, man, I feel like some of these might actually carry over to the bass world. And that's kind of what I've been playing around with.
Here's a question from Kevin. Any insights on these new core tackle products and if the caps will be available in colors other than black?
Yeah, caps will probably be black when we come out with them. Don't know when we're coming out with them, but we've had a pile of requests, so we will do it. We've got a new bait coming out, hopefully by the end of the month. It's a swim bait head design, and it will be unlike anything else that's come out. I love it. I've been using it for the last 6 months, and honestly, the only reason we haven't come out with it sooner is because we decided to come out with the hover rig before we came out with it. But it's a really, really good design. So stay tuned for that.
Okay. Bill Haney says, Matt, do you use the spin rocket any place besides Florida?
Yeah, I use it everywhere. I just used it last Wednesday night in our local Wednesday nighter to catch smallmouth on bed. So yeah, the spin rocket is if you like throwing prop baits, it's a great prop bait because it casts really well. And then secondly, the blades spin extremely well on it. So it takes very little motion to keep the blades spinning. And I also like the fact that they're clear blades versus like the standard. They're clear plastic or some sort of plastic type material versus the traditional metal blades. So therefore they don't give off the flash. They don't give off the same appearance. It's a great bait. If you can find them, get them, because I think they're being discontinued.
Ask that one. We're gonna burn through some of these questions to get caught up. We're backlogged.
Yeah. I didn't.
Do you have any experience fishing from muskie in the Hayward area?
Yeah, that's my vacation joint. That's where my parents have our vacation house, or their house, which is now basically their full-time home. I fish all the local Hayward lakes.
Any tips?
For muskie?
Jitterbug.
I mean, it just depends on the water that you're fishing, but if you're fishing honestly, any of the lakes, whether they're clear bodied or stain bodied, I'd be looking for green cabbage in that 8-foot range.
Gary's right. They did have a Lew's pistol grip a couple years ago that came out. Yeah. It obviously didn't last very long.
And Stren does not show up when you go and look on Tackle Warehouse or Omnia or Bait Works, anywhere. It's like it's gone.
It's gone. Stren's gone.
No more Stren. Ron
says we can't talk about the jig worm anymore. Uh-oh. Does this one bring back anything? A Miller's Wobbler?
The Miller's Wobbler.
Man, I've heard of that recently. What is that? I've heard of that recently.
You guys got me on that one.
I can't remember what it is.
I feel like I should know this, but I don't know. I think I could draw you a picture of it, but I don't know if it's actually a Miller's Wobbler. I collect I used to collect a lot of antique stuff. I can't say I do a ton of it anymore, but I've got a pretty extensive collection of old stuff too.
Darius says he's going to give the Silver Minnow or the Johnson Silver Minnow a try on Kentucky.
Phil said Snagless Sally. Snagless Sally. I
I
grew up fishing Snagless Sally. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's updated versions of the Snagless Sally too that you can get.
Before we get too far along here, we're 30 minutes in, a little over 30 minutes in. We are going to do a giveaway tonight, right?
Yeah, we'll do a giveaway. We might
talk about.
We might pressure Matt into talking about something that he may not want to talk about. If he doesn't want to talk about it, he doesn't have to.
It's his new tattoo. We'll talk about that tonight.
Oh yeah, my new tattoo.
Did you like that? Got some fresh ink.
Dude, I
snuck it in there.
I didn't see it at first, and then I went when I posted the link to Facebook or something. I'm like, what is that? And I was like, you guys, you dogs, giving me tattoos.
Sneaky.
That's all him. Don't be pushing that on me, Ricky Bobby.
Yeah, that was doing a thumbnail at like 11 o'clock last night. I'm like, I'm gonna slap.
It was good. I enjoyed it. It made me laugh out loud.
We're bringing lots of flashbacks. The G Loomis 7.6 pistol grip.
That's a high-end pistol grip, Loomis.
That was out of my league when I was little.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah,
I would
probably want to break that one and send it off and cash in on my lifetime warranty and
get an
possibly
upgrade.
Get an upgrade.
Spend $100 to get something modern. Yeah.
Little shout out from Jack Uxa, Lake of the Ozarks.
Lake of the Ozarks guy.
Awesome.
Yeah, let's talk about Lake of the Ozarks.
Yeah.
It was cool seeing you down there, first of all. He weighed
cool,
so
Lake.
let me give you the backstory real quick. Not so much you, but everybody that's listening. So my buddy Greg lives literally I don't know, like 3 miles from PB2. And that's where the Major League Fishing Invitations were going out of. And we were down there because we had an Anglers in Action tournament on Sunday. So we'd been pre-fishing, and we got off the water Saturday about 2:30. And I pulled up the phone. I was kind of thinking about going, but you're kind of tired. You've been fishing for a couple of days. You're kind of burnt. And it was actually like 87 for 2 days in a row. I wasn't really used to that. And we're sitting around, and I'm on my phone. I'm looking at it at the weigh-in. I'm watching the weigh-in. And I'm like, this is going on literally 5 minutes from where I'm staying. Why am I watching this on my phone when I could just get my lazy ass in the car and drive down there and be right there, which I'm very glad I did. So, and Matt had already weighed in. And so I was like, shoot, I'd like to see Matt. You were on the stream a while back. We talked and stuff. And so I was kind of bummed that I didn't make it there earlier, but you ended up top 10, and so you were hanging around for the goods and stuff, and I got to meet you there. But man, that was a really fun weigh-in. It was really intense. Keith Carson was sitting in the hot seat there in the boat, and I was right next to him. I'll have a video out sometime. I just haven't had a chance to do all the editing. I've got a lot of editing to do on it, but I was standing right next to Keith Carson while John Cox was going across the stage, and the drama and the history that those two have together, being child fishing buddies and high school mates and team partners, and seeing them just right up against each other. And then, Carson actually kind of clued in John as to the areas to fish and stuff, because, John's fishing 1,000 tournaments every year, and he didn't have the practice time that Keith had. So it was cool to see, just to see that all go down. And I feel like that was one of the better weigh-ins that I've experienced. But you've never fished Lake of the Ozarks before? Is that right?
No, never been there. I mean, it's one of the closer derby lakes to my house, and I've never been there. I didn't, you hear a lot of things about it being an Ozark lake and full of docks. And, what I had thought going there was it was going to be a fewer fish tournament, better quality in terms of the bites you got. And I mean, the quality is definitely good, but man, there are a lot of fish in that lake. Like you can catch a pile of fish. So that was a little surprising, and the sheer size of it, as well as the number of docks, make it probably one of the more overwhelming lakes I've ever fished. Like, it's so hard to fish anything that's bank related. And when you're talking about a tournament that's taking place like right in the middle of the spawn period, a lot of the fishing is bank related, but it's like you can't just go down the bank throwing a square bill crankbait, because you can't get to the bank because there's a dock for those of you that haven't fished it before, there's a lot of places where the docks are so tight. I couldn't get my boat between the docks. Like, that's how tight they are. So it's just it was a somewhat frustrating from that standpoint. I think it somewhat worked out to my advantage as well, because I took the time to go in and out of every dock looking for bedfish, which is kind of what my game plan was, at least for the first couple of days. But if you were somebody who just kind of wanted to cover the bank or fish the rock transitions and things like that, man, it's a frustrating lake, but absolutely massive fishery. Yeah, it's a cool lake. I'd love to go back. I really like Ozark lakes. Like, I like how they set up. I feel like I've got a good handle on how the fish transition throughout them based on the springtime, at least. And I feel very comfortable on them, but I definitely got there with the plan that I was going to cover a lot of water. And after the first day of practice, I was like, I really think I need to bear down in one area, even though, I fished in the same area as a lot of the guys who were in the top 10, but the fish were, I think, earlier in the spawn. Like, there weren't nearly as many bedfish up. I think there was some decent quality to be had, but there just weren't that many fish up. And I just decided to bear down after the first day of practice and stay in that area, which, my whole game plan was, if I can go out and catch a good bag the first day, that can kind of help you coast into the third day. And with our tournaments only being 3 days now, bed fishing is a much more viable technique, because a lot of times, in a 4-day tournament, you're just out of bedfish after the first day or the second day, and you just don't have enough to continue. And in this case, my goal was to go out and catch 17 and a half the first day and then see where we're at. And day 2, man, I had 8 pounds. I ate 8.25 pounds, something like that. And I felt good going into that day, because at the end of day 1, I found 3 new good quality bedfish, one of which was a very, very catchable fish. And in hindsight, I kind of wish I had caught it, because I weighed a 3.25 the first day that I know I could have upgraded a little bit. But so I found 3 new fish. I still had probably 15 or so fish that, I had marked in practice that were like 3 pounds or better. And on that day 2, I went there and they were either completely gone or they were just extremely uncatchable fish. And, I abandoned it on day 3. I ran 40 miles up the river and just went fishing and caught 17. I think I had 17 and a half, something like that.
So going into day 1, you said you picked an area that a lot of the top folks were in, right?
Yep.
What made that area so much better, and how did you discern on such a daunting lake as Lake of the Ozarks to pick that area?
Yeah. So it was I think you call it Gravois. Is that what it is? Down by the dam area. So I spent the entire time basically from not all the way to the dam, but where is it Gravois Creek? Is that what it's called?
It's a river, Gravois River.
Okay. So from maybe a mile or 2 down towards the dam from there to 3 miles up lake from the mouth of that creek or river, and then up the Gravois as well, is where I concentrated. I had, in the tiny little bit of research I did on the lake, it seemed like that was an area that kind of popped up a little bit. So I felt good about it. But really what it came down to was, if you're looking to sight fish, the lower end of the lake I knew was going to be clear. And I just generally feel better when I fish Ozark lakes on the lower end when I'm looking for bedfish. Knowing that a a lot of the fish I caught were much deeper than, you know, being straight bank related fish. So, I mean, most of my fish were probably 6 to 8 feet deep. And I kind of like to target the lower end because I feel like a lot of those fish go overlooked by anglers that are looking specifically at the bank.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. And that was going to be my next question, is how deep you were
Yeah.
catching those fish, because I noticed a lot of those shallower beds, there weren't really any good quality fish on. There were a lot of 14.
Yeah.
There were a lot of spotted bass. I saw a lot of 13 and 14-inch spots up there on those shallower beds, and you could still see the deeper beds, especially when the wind kind of slicked off and the sun popped out. You could see that stuff out there. But you know, you got to be looking. You did the right thing. You went into the tournament thinking you were definitely going to be bed fishing. So if I remember right, when we talked, you spent most of your time just looking for beds. And I'm sure.
Yeah, and not even fishing. I mean, I spent maybe a couple hours in the morning, couple hours in the evening when, you know, when the light conditions were just not ideal for it. But yeah, I probably spent, I mean, at least 10 hours a day in practice looking. And when I say looking, I barely even had a rod in my hand. I generally had a spray bottle with a biodegradable Dawn dish soap, which I could spray on the surface, and it kind of helps slick the water off and knock down some of the pollen. I mean, there were fish that I bet you I spent a half hour on in practice, just trying to identify where specifically they were set up, so that when I went back in the tournament, I could kind of have a better idea as to how they were set up. So it's one of those things, like I truly feel like, to be a good bed fisherman, and it's something I feel very confident doing, there's a lot to be learned in practice while you're doing it, versus just, hey, there's a bed there, I'm going to go in the tournament and catch it. Because the more you can have that fish dialed in the tournament, the easier they are to catch in the tournament for you, versus spending, you know, ideally you're not going to spend an hour on them. It's actually something, you know, as much as I feel very confident bed fishing, but it's also something I don't talk about much. I've actually never done a video on my channel about bed fishing tips and secrets, because I feel like it's something I just don't like to talk about that much, because it's one of those things where if I had a lady with me, I'd rather not be bothered. So I don't like to bother the fish while they're doing their thing. But if I got to feed my family, I'll do it.
Right.
You know, you're not the first one that said that on here, though. Dion said the same thing. Like,
I've heard that. Yeah.
It's
really
kind of like that. It's, you taught yourself, you have that much respect for that creature, that you're not going to just go out and give all the secrets away to bed fishing. It's something that takes a long, long time to learn. So, yeah,
it's one. I mean, you know, at this point, I'm a pretty good open book with regards to like my fishing secrets, right? My tips. But the bed fishing thing is just something where I feel like if I can not give the anglers an advantage on the fish, that'll be better for the fishery in the long run. So like even when I did my tournament recap videos, I have a lot of comments where people are kind of knocking me for bed fishing, and I kind of agree with them. Like I don't necessarily condone the you know, active trying to take a guarding fish off their bed, but the reality is this is how I make my career. This is how I make my living. And, you know, for one tournament out of the year, you know, this was really our bed fishing tournament. This is, you know, I'm willing to do it.
Yeah. Well, that same person, if you drop $100 bill on the floor or you drop 100 singles on the floor, which one are they going to pick up?
Yeah.
You're going to pick up the $100 bill every time. That's your bed fish. That's the easy one to pick off versus going down in between 35 dots. Maybe, but sometimes it's going to be the visible one to see.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, for me, it's like, you know, I had a good day 3 just fishing, although two of the fish I weighed were bed fish that I found. But it's still one of those things where, you know, you don't know if you're going to be able to catch that fish or not. But I would rather spend my time fishing for a fish that I know roughly what it weighs versus going down the bank going, well, maybe I'll run into a 3.5 pounder. Like, I'd rather spend that hour fishing for a 3.5 pounder that I know is roughly 3.5 pounds, knowing that maybe I catch it quick and then I can go to the next one and catch it quick, versus I'm just going to go fishing and hope I catch a 3.5 pounder. I'd rather really dial in on the fish I know, are the quality that I'm after.
Well, okay. So what's your thoughts on the BPT format where it's catch, weigh, and release on spawning fish? Because they do have a chance to go right down. You've kind of roughed them up a little bit, but they're going to probably go down and get back on that nest.
I mean, it really it kind of depends on the species. If you catch a largemouth, you may have some really aggressive largemouth that you can catch again. Generally speaking, it's going to take a little bit of time, but man, I mean, if you're smallmouth fishing, you could sit on one bed and catch that fish 20 times in a day, without a doubt. I have no doubt that you could do that. I've fished catch, weigh, release tournaments in Minnesota that there were probably 3 or 4 of us that finished in the top 10, cashed really nice checks, fishing 20 spawning smallmouth, and we all just went in circles. So from that standpoint,
wow.
It's not necessarily ideal, but if you're fishing smallmouth, they're that aggressive, you can do that. So as much as I'd like to say, that it's a great format, and I know in the past they've said that I think they've had rules that say you can't catch that fish more than once, but asking the marshal in your boat to determine whether you've caught that fish or not, I mean, that's a lot to ask, especially if you're talking about smallmouth, where you a lot of times get 4 or 5 fish that are in one tiny little area.
Yeah, I was going to say that because I think that the MLF has implemented that rule on bedfish, but it's up to your marshal, your boat official, to make that determination. But like you said, I mean, how close are they paying attention? I mean, we've all seen largemouth bass beds within 4 or 5 feet of each other, right?
Yeah.
You have one here, and it could have been the male and it could have been the female, and they both could have been 4 pounders. It's not often that happens, but it does happen. So,
sorry.
I was going to tell you, Matt. No, that's okay. I was going to let you know that you hit Lake of the Ozarks at a good time as far as the visibility, because typically it's not quite as clear as what it has been. I mean,
oh really?
Yeah. It's been very, very clear this year. Some of those same areas you were in probably would have had at least a foot or less of visibility.
How was the boat traffic when you guys were there?
Saturday they had that poker run.
Yeah, Saturday was brutal. Like, the whole week really wasn't that bad until Saturday. Saturday was like, because keep in mind the practice period in the first 2 days of the tournament really were not that crazy warm either. But Saturday, I think, was 80, 88, I think.
Yeah, they got toasty.
And it was a hot, sunny day. They had the poker run. I mean, everyone was out there on Saturday, and you really got to see how that place can shake up, to the point where if it was like that in a May weekend, I can't even imagine what 4th of July weekend would be like.
Oh, it's absolutely bonkers out there
every day in the summers.
Well, yeah, you can't. They really don't have a lot of tournaments in the summertime. Most of them are night, Tuesday nighters, Wednesday nighters.
I can see why. I mean, it's a weird feeling to be going down the lake. Now, granted, when I was coming back that 40 miles on Saturday, I gave myself 2.5 hours, because I knew it's where I was at, it wasn't that bad. But I mean, it only took 10 miles, and all of a sudden it really got into that poker run type atmosphere. And it's a kind of a crazy feeling. I was going slow, 30 miles an hour, because it was just a washboard, right? And you couldn't really get any good rhythm on the waves. And I had a bunch of fish. I just wanted to make sure I got them back alive, right? And you're going down the lake, and all of a sudden you hear that rumble coming, and you're like, what is that? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm gonna get past, and you look over your shoulder, and there's a cigarette boat coming at 70 that's still I mean, they're generally not right on top of you when you hear them, but it's just an odd feeling to kind of hear that thunderous noise coming and then have them just go by you like they're on glass, perfect water conditions, and you're sitting there like katong, katong.
Yeah.
And you're a bath toy at that point, right? I mean, you're the smallest.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it was, I mean, it really got brutal because, I mean, when the pontoons are passing you and they've got like 250s on the back and you're like, I mean, there's nothing more I can do right now but kind of laugh. I mean, that's how it was. I mean, some of those boats are just ridiculous. Like, Gabe, I don't know. Did you see them putting that hydroplane racing boat in at the launch site?
I didn't.
I took pictures of it. It was like a 45-foot dual hull, like straight up hydroplane racing boat that they put in during the weigh-in. I mean, it was just, I don't know. I mean, I'm used to rough water, fish a lot of the big Great Lakes. And this is, when you're talking about just giant boat waves that are kind of, I mean, the main portion of the Lake of the Ozarks is kind of canyony too. So it kind of does that whole bouncing off the shoreline.
Yep.
Yeah. I was happy to get back on Saturday. Let's put it that way.
Well, up north, those waves, there's, like you said, there's rhythm to them, right?
Oh, dude, the great, you get on the Great Lakes and you got 8-10 footers. I would take that any day over what we had on Lake of the Ozarks. Cause those big ones, you can ride them at like 40 miles an hour, just up and down, or you get in, you ride parallel to them and
you're not getting beat up.
Yeah. They're giant waves. Like you get in the trough and you can't see over the way, like, I mean, you feel like you are in a tunnel, but it's so much more manageable than some random giant cruiser / cigarette boat / tri-tune that's just throwing 4-footers and they're just, popping up everywhere. Like that's
I was going to ask him, hold on. So for a guy that's never been in the north and had walls of water on both sides, have you ever had a boat like
what
come over the top of where you're
another boat?
Yeah, like
no
T-bone that.
No, but well, I could see it happening, except for the fact that generally when you have those giant waves,
nobody's doing this.
You're all kind of running in the same direction.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So, or if you're not running parallel this way, you're running parallel this way.
Okay.
So you see the boats coming, but no, knock on wood, I haven't had any close calls with respect to that. Cause honestly, like if you did have something where you took a wave or, I mean, that's the type of stuff where you could really get in danger pretty bad. I mean, it would be bad, but I would still rather run that. Like, I mean, what that Lake Erie tournament I was talking about when I found that jitterbug, I ended up running to the north end of Lake St. Clair. So it was like a 95-mile trip each way. So you go across Lake Erie, up the Detroit River, across Lake St. Clair. I would rather do that than deal with what I dealt with on Lake of the Ozarks.
Yeah, I know. I saw two things across from Greg's house. He's up by the 24 or 26 mile. There is a tri-tune on the dock that has 400 Yamaha R's on a pontoon. And I need to take a picture of it.
That's gotta be like a quad tune though.
I don't know,
like
but all I know is it's like 1,600 horsepower or more on a, it's not a cigarette boat, it's a flat whatever. And then we also saw a full-size diesel, like something that would be pulling a 53-foot trailer. It was a 53-foot boat trailer with bunks, like all these different bunk systems going down the road.
With no boat on it?
No, he had already set the boat in.
Well, a lot of those boats on those big poker runs, they come in like
crooked,
like that because they're too wide to go down the road.
Yeah, I've seen. I watched them launch a big cigarette boat at PB2 one time. This is like 3 or 4 years ago, and the water level like went up like quite a bit. Like it seemed like it went up a couple feet. Like if you were standing close to the lake, you would have got your shoes wet, and it was just violent, like an iceberg, like a big ice block chipping off an iceberg. Just it's crazy. The amount of houses too.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like I mean, and that's the thing. You go down, you fish all these docks, and they're not like normal floating docks because the docks are built for like 40-foot boats, So it takes a while to like slide in one, then back out of it, slide around to the next one. It's not like I'm going around, 10-foot floating rafts for pontoon boats. These are like full-blown houseboat docks.
Well, you were talking about like for the folks that have never been to Lake of the Ozarks, to like give you an idea, there could be from walkway to walkway, there could be 100 yards, and there's 2 docks there. And what Matt said, there's a spot to get your boat in. So there's 100 yards of shoreline that you can't access easily to fish back there.
Yeah.
That's
you're skipping under cables. My boat, I think I won $12,000, and I probably have most of that profit goes into boat repair at this point. I mean, as careful as I was, we had high winds in practice, and then the boat waves on Friday and Saturday. It's like, your boat is constantly rubbing on cables or clipping a dock, and, you're getting little chinks of fiberglass. I mean, I really felt like I was careful and came out of there pretty well banged up.
Yeah. I know a lot of guys will put their power poles down just halfway to kind of protect the back end of the boat.
Just kind of keep it like bumpers back there.
Yeah, but man, it's something. It's a lot of work fishing docks, but that's why you can sneak around the backs of those docks and catch those fish.
Yep.
You just need an old boat to take to Ozarks.
Yeah, Mike used to have an 18-footer. He used to have an 18-foot Ranger, and that was perfect for fishing docks.
Just to slide in and out, Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter what boat you have. When you're running around out there, you got to go slow. I mean, just because you got a 21-footer doesn't mean you can go 50 miles.
It's not like Kentucky Lake. If you got a 21-footer versus an 18-footer, you can actually get on top of the waves.
Those waves just, like Matt was saying, it's just like, it's like a wash machine out there. It's craziness.
Every time I've been down there, it's on a weekend for pleasure, and it's a nut house down there. So,
well, I would actually love to go back just to see what it's like for 4th of July. Not take my bass boat. I just want to see how big of a party it is. Like, that's not my style, but when you have like pull up pool party type places, where they have docking for like 100 boats, and you can go up to some random bar, or there was like a pull up cannabis store. This lake is 100% a party lake. Like, and I just kind of feel like I'd like to see it just to say I experienced it. I'm sure I would hate it, but
yeah, it's like opening day at the trout park. You just want to kind of see what it's about.
Yeah, dude. It's one of those things where it's like when you see that many houses and that many boats on a lake, I can only imagine what it is. And the fact that we saw some of the craziest boats I've seen in a long time, like, I can't imagine what it would be like on a summer weekend. And I don't mind naked ladies. I would look at that.
Now you really want to go.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a moped. You want to go, you just don't want to.
You see boats in no water.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I've been out there on a summer weekend, and summer weekend is crazy. I've never been out there on a holiday weekend.
Yeah.
So
I do for the tournaments we go to. I always do Bridgeford promo days. So on our day off, I go to like the local Walmart or grocery stores, that the retailers that have Bridgeford food products. And I did a Walmart one in Osage Beach, and I talked to the Walmart store manager, and like in our discussion, I was like, how many people on a normal summer weekend do you guys see here? And she said that on a normal summer weekend, they have 250,000 out of town visitors to the lake. So I don't know if that's the entire lake or if that's like just that part of the lake, but 250,000 people on an average weekend is a lot of out of towners. And
you could probably 5 to 10x that on a holiday.
Oh, I can't even imagine 4th of July or Memorial Day weekend or Labor Day. That's got to be. You probably could walk across that lake on the boats.
Yeah, you could.
Just don't fall off of one because you'll drown in all the waves.
Yeah, you get run over real fast.
Yeah. There, it's close to St. Louis. It's close to Kansas City. You just get a big influx. 250,000. Yeah. Wow, that's a lot. That's nuts. Okay, so a couple things I want to talk about. Well, let's talk about the Keith Poche thing. You talk about that? We were kind of talking about this backstage before we went live. So set it up,
man. So I listened to LBL today, and he came on and kind of Keith came on to Luke's show and gave him his rundown of what happened. And we were discussing before, like this is before Matt came on and backstage. It was, what defines leaving tournament waters?
Okay, so the Bassmaster Open on Toledo Bend.
Yep.
Keith Poche
accesses a backwater area via a rollover dam, levee, road, whatever you want to call it, to get to a backwater area. Now, I can imagine if the water was up, everybody could shoot into this waterfowl management area, I think is what it was. It was deemed part of tournament waters, but the only way to access it was via jumping a land. Well, I guess the argument is that he left tournament waters at that point, even though he entered into legal tournament waters, but coming out of water across land apparently is leaving tournament waters.
And he said, something that he said that I thought was interesting. And at first I thought it was crazy, but after listening to him kind of explain it, it's sort of kind of in a weird way makes sense. Is he was comparing that dam to a lock system. So when you're in a lock, you cannot fish. It's off limits. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you enter off limits waters.
Right. So he was trying to say that dam was just the same as a lock. It was off limits.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, I sort of kind of see where he's coming from, but
it's all
a sticky situation.
It's all interpretation of but the receiving and or as both parties see the situation.
But right? I think we all three decided that knowing him and the past that he's had, it's probably a good idea to contact the tournament director and get clarification before you do something like that.
It wasn't, so he knew he was going to that area, right? It wasn't like I was fishing this row of cypress trees and was like, hey, there's a little pond back there. I'm going to jump this levee and see what's back there. It was predetermined. I'm going to go to this area. Hey, not many guys are going to be able to access this. Maybe I should give the TD a call. That would be, I think Matt, I, and Gabe both all agreed. That would be the first step that I would make if I'm going to jump some land mass.
But if you know that there is a 20-pound bag on the other side of that, and it's might be very likely that the tournament director says, no, you can't do that, you might just take your chances. I don't know. So, I mean, what do you think about all that, Matt? I mean, you're out there doing this all the time.
Do you guys know? So I've seen the video. Yep. It's quite impressive. Like
it is.
Like I would never do it with a fiberglass rig, but if I had a tin boat like he's got, I mean, I'd like to think I got the balls to do that. I don't.
We both run tin boats. I'm not doing it in my tin boat.
No. Do you know, was the backwater that he was accessing it, was that connected by a pipe or anything? Yes. And was it the same water level, or was it actually bermed up and created another, say, pond on the back?
He said on LBL that there were a series of little streams that went through the woods that connected it. Something that you wouldn't be able to get.
And there was a pipe that connected that pond to that lake.
Okay.
Because I kind of feel, I mean, so my stance on this is, and this goes as a tournament angler, I'm not saying this is the right approach or wrong approach. My approach is, if I have a question, I'm contacting the tournament director to get an answer as soon as possible, because the last thing I want to do is jump into that pond, waste 3 hours of practice, find a bunch of fish, then jump out of it, and then call the tournament director and be like, can I fish this? And him be like, no, because then I just wasted 4 hours of practice in out of bounds water.
And you deflated your hopes, right? Like,
well, yeah, I mean, so I've done nothing. I have done no good to myself by being in that area. So, I mean, I've had a lot of questions in the past regarding what I can fish and not fish. And am always calling. I probably bother the tournament director more than I should, just because I don't want to waste my time doing something I can't do. So from that perspective, I believe that's what he should have done. I could see the argument if this was connected. Now, if it's connected by a creek, I don't know that this is the same thing, but if this were connected by a pond and you were exact same water level, meaning if the lake went down, that backwater he was in went down the same amount. I mean, I could see there being more of a valid case in terms of them being connected. But if it's connected by a stream at that point, if the lake goes down, I don't necessarily think that means the backwater goes down in the same manner. So I could see that. I don't know that falls into it. So I guess what I'm saying is I can see what he's trying to argue. Ultimately, as a tournament angler, and Keith knows this. Like, I don't know Keith personally. I have talked to him over the years, but I mean, if you got a question, you go to the tournament director. That's what it comes down to. So to try to, after the fact, if it's ruled against him in his favor, I don't really feel like he can necessarily blame Bass for this, because as a tournament angler, we know if there's a gray area, we need to ask versus, that whole approach of it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. Right. And that whole approach is maybe fine in the real world if you're talking about like personal relationships, but when you're talking about your career and trying to cash checks in tournaments, that whole idea of asking for forgiveness after the fact doesn't necessarily fly. It's either you're DQ'd or not. And in this case, he got DQ'd.
Yeah. And like we talked about earlier, he's got a YouTube channel called Off the Grid, and he's notorious for doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he has to know that spotlight's going to be on him if he's jumping berms and levees and stuff. And he just so happened that there was a guy there that filmed it and shared it with him, and he actually dropped it on his social media because he didn't think it was any big deal. And I don't know. I think the bottom line is what you said. The best thing to do is ask the tournament director.
When in doubt, ask.
Yeah, I mean, really.
So, Living Missouri Outdoors, I heard this part of the conversation. So that part of the conversation, and I don't think you listened to the episode, Matt, but it was that he had asked about a situation of jumping another levee in another tournament to access other waters. Tournament director said, no, those waters are not eligible to fish. Those are off limit. That's off limit area. But nothing in that conversation, nothing was said about that you can't jump a levee. So he just assumed, you know what happens when we assume, that jumping the levee was okay, just fishing the water wasn't. Well, they never mentioned anything about it. So I see where you're coming on that, but the bigger issue was it was off limit. So that negates the conversation about having to
But
jump
at
a
Toledo
levee.
Bend, this water that he jumped into was not off limits.
Was not off limits according to Bass.
It's just
so
going over the
unless you
land.
catch a big wave apparently, and then you could jump it right before.
So you're saying Bass said the water he fished was legal. But there's no way to access legal water.
I guess if the water level was up, he could access it because it was part of the Toledo Bend area.
Yeah. I mean, my stance on this is going to be the same. You got to ask for permission. I don't care how many tournaments you've fished. In fact, the more tournaments you fish, the more experienced of an angler you are, the more you're aware of how every time you go to a tournament, it seems like the rules change, right? Like here you can do something, here you can't do it. And from that standpoint, the best thing to do is ask to find out whether you can or can't do it. So do I think what Keith did was absolutely amazing? And do I think that that's the type of stuff that is awesome for the sport? I love it. But I can't sit here and say that I'm not going to sit here and say he shouldn't have been DQ'd. If it was deemed a rule violation by Bass, then I guess it's a rule violation. And the reality is he should have. It's not probably doing something like that. You should ask for the permission to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then the rule would have to be no jumping levees, but you could jump
logs,
beaver dams, just maybe a man-made levee or something. I don't know where the rule would fall, but
it'll be the Keith Poche rule, just like we have the Roland Martin rules. We have
got
the
the
Scott
Ott
Martin,
Defoe,
Ott Defoe. There's a lot of those rules that are.
It's kind of a badge of honor if you get a rule named after you.
Well, I mean, there's not that's the other thing. There's not black and white rules for every single situation out there. I mean, you were talking about tows on a dock earlier, and you can't have more than half of your weight on the dock. Well, there's not pressure sensors on your boat and on your dock on the dock saying, well, Matt, you got 100 pounds on the dock and 50 pounds on the boat.
He weighs 150.
I'm just saying he weighs 150.
I do.
I don't want to.
I do. There's no, I agree 100%. There's a, it's, and I go back and forth on this, right? Like, should the sport have a small amount of rules that are very black and white, and everything else is kind of good to go because it's not a black and white rule, meaning all of the gray area rules, because there are a lot of them now. If we just went to black and white, a handful of set rules, part of me says that would be great because then you'd have stuff like this. The other part of me says, if you truly want to be a professional sport, we all have to play by the same set of rules. And maybe that means you got to have, instead of having 10 black and white rules, you have 1,000 black and white rules where you take out all the gray area, right? And if we're a true sport, like you look at the NFL or the NBA, there are very specific rules that everyone has to follow by. To me, part of me says if you go that route, then we all should be running a 20-foot boat with this electronic, have all these 5 rod and reels, these 10 baits. Like,
it's NASCAR.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the right decision on it is. I mean, I'm an angler that really likes to try to find those hidden little gems that are out of the way. I have jumped logs before and done things where I've gotten into areas where I'm like, I don't know how I'm getting out of here. I've never had it pan out, but that's always been a practice thing. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I think as anglers, that's part of what we all are looking for a lot of times are those hidden little gems. And, Keith's gone out. He's at a disadvantage for running a smaller boat that's not as heavily horsepowered. So he gives up some things to be able to do some things.
Yep.
And, in this case, I don't know, is jumping a berm okay? I mean, let's say, if that berm had water coming over it and it was a dam. So, I mean, let's say there was actually flowing water. So say, in a place like the Mississippi where you've got some spillway type things, if he was able to get up and above that, would that be okay? If they, let's say there was no actual lock, and they said you can't, these are the boundaries, and it said nothing about jumping up a spillway. I mean, is that legal? I mean, if he wants to do that and take the risk of sinking his boat, part of me says that should be allowed. The other part of me says there's a reason you have rules and boundaries, and it's so somebody doesn't kill themselves doing a Dukes of Hazzard over a berm.
Right. I think if you're badass enough to do it, you should just be able to do it. I mean, like you said, he's at a huge disadvantage. He's not able to go out and sit in really big water, make a really long run, like targeting fish on active target or forward facing sonar. He's kind of given that up because his niche is
shallow water,
finding that shallow stuff and going for it.
Niche stuff.
I think that's a cool thing about bass fishing. There's people that excel at bed fishing. There's people that excel at forward facing sonar, skipping. Yeah, everybody's got their little 2 or 3 things, and that's his deal.
But back to what Matt said though, until the rules become black and white and it's this, and the rest of it is free for all.
I mean, he told the guy that was crappie fishing to get out of the way because he was coming over the levee.
Yeah,
so I think at least he had enough decency to warn the guy.
Right. Back up.
I don't want to kill you. I might kill myself, but I don't want to kill you.
Right. Every famous redneck's last words is, "Hey, watch this," or "Hold my bear."
Yeah,
we got a very important question.
I'm all for that type of innovation, if you want to call that innovation. I just also feel like if you're going to do something that's in that gray area, you're probably better off asking to see if you can do it.
I agree. That was the right thing to do. Here's an
So
important question.
this is a very important question coming from myself and my bourbon buddy. What's your bourbon of choice tonight?
I have Elmer T. Lee in that glass.
Okay.
One of my favorites.
I bought a bottle of that.
Ron's a Mille Lacs guy too. Ronald D.
A couple months ago, and I got a killer deal on it, and we'll talk about that later on.
It's a tough one to find. I probably got another bottle bunkered away, but it's a tough one to find.
I haven't cracked mine because I only have one.
Yeah, it's one of the best drinkers out there. That's still, I don't know. I mean, it's not that reasonable anymore, but it's one of my favorites.
Better than like a Weller 12?
Weller 12 is good too. Weller 12 is right up there. I prefer Elmer T. Lee, but okay. I like a Weller 12.
Well, I just like the name.
Yeah.
I gotta find another bottle before I crack mine. So
I used to be a huge bourbon. I mean, I still enjoy my bourbon, but I used to collect a lot of it. When I was in Chicago, I was really early in on the bourbon craze.
So you got them at cheap.
And had a very large collection that I ended up piecing out most of it several years ago, and I wish I had kept most of it. That
market kind of tanked the last 6 to 8 months, according to my brother-in-law, who is the connoisseur of sorts of bourbons. He's got lots of high-end stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not as good as it used to be. At least it kind of died off.
Well, it got pretty ridiculous. You know, it got pretty, without talking prices, it got pretty ridiculous. But that was my thing. I ended up selling a bunch of it. I mean, I made decent money on it. It got to the point where I'm like, I can't drink a bottle that's worth this. Like, I would rather sell it. There's plenty of good drinkers out there.
Yeah.
So I sold most of it. I've still got a few little unicorn gems, but yeah.
At some point, like, you can't drink, like you said, you can't drink a bottle that's thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't justify it. Like, my taste buds are not that good.
Yeah.
So no, I can't justify it.
Somebody's got some high-class taste.
Yeah, somebody mentioned Pappy. You know, I like, as an example of that, I had a case of Pappy 23s that I paid retail price for, $300 bottles, and I sold that case for $6,500. And right now it's like, you know, that, which was great, but that case now is like a $60,000 case.
Oh, is it really? Oh my gosh.
When you said 6,500, I was like, oh wow, you got yeah.
That's what I mean. I doubled what I paid for the case. You know, I was just going around the local liquor stores in the Chicago area. This was before most of that happened, and the Pappy thing just, I mean, everything took off. Yep. So
what's a whistle pig?
You
heard of that?
Whistle pig's is a good one. It's a little overrated and it's way overpriced in my opinion.
Okay, because I saw that at Sam's Club the other day and it was like $100-something bucks.
Yeah,
and I'm like, wow, that's.
Well, let's put it that way. That Elmer T. Lee he's got is
a
very and in my world that's a high end bottle. In the bourbon world, it is not a high end bottle.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I've had this one open for like a year and I'm just sipping on it, like enjoying it.
Nice.
Well, I bought mine for sub 30, if that tells you anything.
Yeah, that's a good one. I actually know of a bar in northern Wisconsin that has a bottle like that's opened at the bar that you can go get for like a $4 pour.
What?
Yeah, and it's like the old school old black label Elmer T. Lee.
Wow.
I don't know how. I mean, the bottle's got to be 20 years old at this point.
Are they just refilling it with like rail or?
I don't know. I don't think they have any clue. Like this is northern Wisconsin where you're out in the middle of nowhere.
So every time you frequent this bar, you get you a.
Yeah, well, I've been there twice, and I'm pretty sure it's Elmer, and I've had it out of the same bottle, and it hasn't moved much in that probably 2-year span.
Still has the same dust mark.
Everybody's drinking Stag.
Yeah, pretty much so. Pretty much so.
Do you guys drink Stag up there?
Well, like Stag Junior or the
Stag
George?
Beer.
No, beer Stag.
Oh, Stag beer?
You ever heard of it?
Never heard of it.
No.
Okay.
No, I like my beer too, but
Steak, taters, and gravy is what we call it around here.
no, we've got, I'm working on a bunch of different breweries for sponsors of the YouTube channel more than anything, but, I can't seal the deal yet, but Wisconsin has some amazing breweries.
You guys got a ton of little microbreweries, don't you?
Oh, dude, they're everywhere. I mean, the town I live in has 7 of them.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, and some are tiny and some are big. And we got Point Brewery, if you've heard of Point Brewery, they're pretty big. Central Waters is another big one, or at least starting to get much bigger. So yeah, that's kind of a way they're marketing the town. Come and do the what do they call it? They have a special name for it, like the brew pub tour or something like that. I don't know what they call it, but
what's your go-to like flavor of beer? Are you an IPA, a stout?
Yeah, you guys will probably make fun of me. I like hazy IPAs.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That's my jam.
I like Busch Light. So
I can't drink.
Yeah, that's not really my jam.
Yeah, see,
I can't drink that.
I'll hang with you on the bourbon.
Although Yingling, I had a Yingling.
How was that?
And it was good.
What was it?
Yeah, it's a lighter beer.
Okay. Which one did you get? Like the lager or
just the regular?
Okay.
Whatever. Yeah, the lager.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was good for a lighter beer.
I'll hang with you guys on the bourbon, but when you guys talk about like IPAs and microbreweries, I'm out.
It's all good in my world. It's part of the Wisconsin lifestyle, I feel like.
Dustin says you're going to get that Spotted Cow sponsorship.
Yeah, New Glarus is a great brewery too. They're I mean Spotted Cow is a great drinking, like just hanging out drinking beer, but they've got a bunch of other really good ones.
All right, here's a question from Zach.
We can go back to fishing for once. I mean,
yeah, we'll dive into a couple things here real quick. What do you use your core tackle hover rig for?
Yeah.
And what's the best baits for it?
So, well, I can tell you Saturday I was standing on a break wall in Sturgeon Bay with my 2 boys catching smallmouth on every other cast, fishing a hover rig, 3/64 ounce hover rig with a Kitech Shad Impact, 4-inch Kitech Shad Impact, which is becoming one of my favorite baits on the hover rig. Basically, if you're talking about fishing any sort of fish that are up on flats, cruising or shallower water, I'd say 10 foot of water or less, the 3/64 ounce size is phenomenal because you get a ton of gliding motion, a lot of erratic fall that generates reaction strikes. And then if you're fishing a little bit more cover, maybe if you're fishing like docks or some, rock bank, I like to fish the 1/8 ounce size, which is a 3/0 hook with a creature bait style, a beaver style bait, big flat body, just to get it to hover around. So bait wise, the Berkeley Maxent flatworm is a great one. The Flash Tricks and Live Tricks by Bass Tricks. This is on the 3/64 ounce, is an absolute killer. This is the Flash Tricks. That's a killer little guy. You can throw it on all your stick worms. We're seeing amazing success if you like to throw your Senko or your General or, whatever your straight stick worm is that you like. There's really not too many bad baits to use it on. I would say if you're gonna stay away from any type of bait, it would be baits that have big flapper type craws, because what that does is create drag in the water and prevent the bait from gliding. It puts brakes on your bait basically. So your straight tail baits like flukes and things like that are just amazing on the hover rig.
So are you fishing that 6-pound test, 8-pound test fluorocarbon?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll fish it. The smaller 3/64 ounce, generally I throw an 8-pound fluorocarbon, a leader to like 10-pound braided mainline on a 7.3 medium light action spinning rod. But, at both Eufaula as well as Lake of the Ozarks, I was fishing the 1/8 ounce size with this is one with a creature hog on 15-pound braid with a 7.3 medium heavy bait casting rod.
Huh. Okay.
It's dude, it's awesome on those Ozark lakes where you can, where you get some of those like rock transition or those kind of those flat bluff banks where you get more of that stair step rock.
Right.
You can pick this thing up and it just like glides down those rocks, and the fish have a hard time resisting it.
I'm gonna put you on solo. Hold that up again really good. I want to get a pretty good look at it.
Yeah, so this is the Max Scent Creature Hog. So it's a beaver style bait, but the big flat body really just lets this bait just glide all over the place, and you get a really cool erratic fall out of it. But the killer part to a lot of this, so most people always talk about the fall. What happens is when this bait sits on the bottom, so when I pick up line, like if you were throwing a traditional Texas rig, the bait would just come right back at you when you pick it up. Because it's a 90-degree jig hook, what happens when you pull up on your bait or give it a quick pop is the bait will stay close to the bottom and dart to one side or the other. So it creates a real good erratic, movement that generates those reaction strikes.
And I'm assuming the flatter the bait this way, like that Creature Hog who is super flat, any kind of beaver style bait is going to have more resistance when you pop it up and get more darting
to go right or left.
Do you have it just without the bait on it? You have one?
Yeah. I think I got one. If not, I can just pull it out. I got so much stuff on my desk. So I'll just pull it out so you guys can see it.
Okay.
So this is the 1/8 ounce. We're coming out with a bunch of different sizes. So that's the 1/8 ounce with just the standard weed guard in it.
That's interesting how that weight's all the way down the
shank. It's just we just transfer the weight down the hook shank.
It's like a flying minnow. Remember the flying minnow?
Mm-hmm.
Or what was that?
Flying lure.
The flying lure, yeah.
Flying lure. Yeah, you get a lot of people, like here's just the Berkeley General. The bait just glides all over. The other really cool part to it though is because of that nub. So that point.
Yeah.
When you pull the bait up and over that, it like locks it in. So like this weekend, I mean, I probably caught 15 smallmouth on that Shad Impact, that Kitech Shad Impact, which is a very soft plastic. I had that thing on for 2.5 days. I never changed it. So I went through, I didn't even go through the bait. It's still on my rod, still usable, but I used one bait, caught a pile of fish, which is generally a bait that I end up, going through one bait per one fish when you're using it. So it does a great job at prolonging the life of your plastics, as well as getting, a really good gliding and movement out of your baits.
So between the 90-degree bend and the weed guard, is that a pretty snagless, weedless lure at that point?
Yeah, it kind of depends on what you're fishing. I'm not going to sit here and say it's ideal for grass fishing because, with your 90-degree angle, if you're fishing through grass, it tends to want to grab grass around the hook eye. If you're fishing it around wood or you're fishing it around rock, it does a really good job at gliding over the hard objects. So it is, I find it to be much more snag resistant, especially around rock, than like say a traditional jig head. I mean, I think it's phenomenal.
Okay,
but that's me. Yeah, I don't have any issue with respect to hookups.
Yeah, well, it's basically an exposed hook, so it makes
sense. And the
sense.
dummy here wants to see you rig a bait because I want to know how that all works. So we're going to put you back on solo here and rig one up.
So we've got I don't know why this is so hard for me to do on my computer. When I do it like in front of the GoPro, it's fine. But so the key here is really from a hooking standpoint, you want to go in about 1/4 inch behind the head. So if I'm 1/4 inch behind it, because you want to leave room for that nose cone to be in the front of the bait, and then you just thread it on. And hopefully you guys are watching this all right.
Yeah, it's looking good. Yeah. It's looking good. We can see it good.
So you thread it on to the point where like you've got enough worm to thread it up to about your weed guard, and then you just slide it up. And just to point out too, all of them come with the weed guard. I would say in 70% of the instances, I actually cut the weed guard off, which makes it much easier to rig. But just, a lot of people are asking me why we don't come out with one that's not a weedless version. But then you just pop the head up and over, push it down on the nose cone, and there it's locked in place. It's just an exposed hook with a light weed guard, dynamite bait, but easy to to rig up once you've done it a few times. The first couple times it might take you a little bit, but
that's a wire weed guard.
Yeah, it's a light wire weed guard in this one. Now we are coming out with some heavier flipping versions, specifically stouter hook, a bigger hook, stouter weed guard. We got a lot of them in the works.
Still 90-degree bend?
Yep, that'll be a 90 in those.
Okay.
Single weed guard or twin?
Well, depending on the version, we'll have both, I think.
Okay, yeah.
Some stiffer single as well as twin weed guards.
No fiber?
Not at this point, no.
I would imagine there's not enough weight there or lead there to get a fiber in.
Yeah, we tried it. It becomes a little bit harder to pull the plastic up and around it because the fiber weed guards are
that makes sense.
Bigger around. Yeah.
Well, and it has to have some shape to it to hold that weed guard.
Yeah, and that would be the other thing is you need more lead in those areas to hold the weed guard in. It just did not work, in our opinion. Somebody else, I mean, I know there's copycats out there. Somebody sent me one that's pretty much a straight knockoff of it. And, if somebody else comes out with something that's got a fiber weed guard in, good for them. But we didn't feel comfortable coming to market with it.
Right.
Yeah, I know it's like a stupid tube where you've got a piece of the plastic on the front. When you pull it, it encourages the bait to kind of it catches and kind of stands up too. So I'm sure some of that's going on with that too. If you instead of popping it, if you were to just kind of pull it, it would probably the plastic would want to catch on the nose and maybe make it come up for like if you're fishing something with crawl, pinchers, kind of that defensive position.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, guys, I'm telling you, I feel like we've opened up an entire can of worms with respect to like internally weighted baits now. And there's a lot of different ideas and potential things you can do to get different movement out of baits.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. I got to be honest, I haven't messed with those, but I see 100% how I like that kind of stuff. I mean, I like fishing that kind of finessey gliding.
Yeah, so I do it with Johnny Schultz, who's with Fish the Moment. He and I are 50-50 partners at Core Tackle. And we really started it because we're like, you know what? We've got a lot of ideas, a lot of things that we want to make for ourselves. Like if you saw I'm not even going to call them prototypes to these, but the baits that I've been using in tournaments. Like I was hand making different things and, I'm messing with different molds that I've created. And a lot of it was like, I showed some stuff to Johnny and Johnny's like, those are cool. And he's like, I've got these ideas. And I'm like, those are cool. And it was like, you know what, let's try this. And at the very least, we should be able to make the baits that we want to make for ourselves. And maybe we don't make any money doing it, but we still get to make the baits we want. And the hover rig has gone over much better than we expected. But at the same time, it's not necessarily surprising because I've been using it for probably almost close to a year at this point. And it's pretty ridiculous. Like as an example, I'm fishing offshore with my two boys at Sturgeon Bay, and we had 3 bass boats fishing a tournament that were within, I'm not going to say casting distance of the boat, but we could cast to each other's lines. And myself and my older boy, Hank, were out fishing the boats like 3-1. And maybe we were in a better position. Maybe we were throwing a hover rig. I don't know, but it was fun to be in that position. I'll tell you that.
Could have been the max scent too.
Well, we were throwing Kitech shad impacts at that point.
Okay.
So maybe it was the what do they have? Squid
oil, squid
like
juice,
yeah, squid oil. Yeah.
So that's you're casting out, letting it fall all the way to the bottom, and just
I fish it. Yeah, I fish it the same way. So a lot of people like to fish it more for suspended fish if they're using it on like forward-facing sonar. I really like to fish it in the same sort of manner I'd fish a really light Ned rig. Throw it out, bait goes to the bottom, and then when it goes to the bottom, I give it a quick wrist pop. Like I'm not stroking it, but I'm giving it just a quick pop, and that pop gets that thing to dart all over the place, and it generates, generally speaking, your bite either comes on the initial fall or comes right after you give it that quick wrist pop.
So is it falling more level?
No, I mean it falls.
It's a fall nose down.
No, I would say it falls at about a 45.
Okay.
Like if you were to throw it just on like whatever your favorite stick worm is, that thing could glide. If you're in 5 feet of water, it could easily glide 5 feet to one direction.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
What about skipping? Justin says he wants to skip docks.
Skips like a dream.
Okay.
Skips
yeah,
like
I
a
can
dream.
see that.
Yeah.
Less spinning gear.
The less appendages that you have on the bait that you have, and it's gonna skip for days, I would imagine.
Yeah. Generally, I do feel like the baits work better with less appendage baits, because the more appendages, the more those appendages grab water and put brakes on your bait for moving. If you got big flappers, like if you throw let's say a chigger craw, right? Big flappers, you throw that on a Texas rig, it's going to pretty much fall straight vertical because those flappers are just keeping it in place as it falls. If you were to, switch that onto a hover rig, you'll get more gliding motion, but it's still going to fall more vertical than it will horizontal. If you put it on a beaver or a creature hog, all of a sudden, instead of it falling like this, it goes like that. Yeah. It really moves well.
That's really cool, man. Ron wants to know, where can we buy the core tackle stuff?
Yeah. You can check them out at coretackle.com. So that's the only place we're selling right now. But I've been talking with like Tackle Warehouse. I had a really great call today. So hopefully we're in Tackle Warehouse in, I'm going to say, a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So you'll be able to find it there too.
Excellent. That seems like something I'm going to be throwing around. How's the line twist on it? Have you ever tried to like do a swivel with a leader on it?
Yeah. You do get a little bit of line twist, but it's not nearly as bad as you'd think, because the bait doesn't want to roll over. It just glides. Mm-hmm. So when the twist comes in, it's actually because it's gliding, and you pick up the rod, which will bring the bait back. Right. So it almost twists around itself, but I really don't experience bad line twist at all. Like I get worse line twist a lot of times with like a drop shot or something along those lines, where you're just getting it and you're reeling it in and the bait's just going like this. But I don't really have bad line twist. You get, depending on the bait you're using, you might get a little bit more than others, but I haven't had an experience where I'm like, man, I gotta let the line twist out of my line yet.
Huh.
Braid to fluoro?
Yeah, on the spinning gear, I use braid to fluoro. On the bait casting gear, usually straight 15-pound fluoro.
We got a request from Kirk. He says, Matt, can you make an 1/8 ounce hover rig with a 2/0 or 1/0 hook, please? They'd sell like crazy around Table Rock. So I imagine for like the little Demiki, the little armor shads and stuff.
Yeah, we've got 4 other sizes in production right now that we should have out, I'm going to say by the middle of June. And then we've got, I don't know, I'm going to say another 6 or 7 sizes that are in prototype production right now.
You know what I just thought about?
What's that?
We were Bull Shoals fishing in like 80 to 90 foot of water.
Oh, that would have killed them there.
If you got like a 1/2 ounce one and you could actually keep the integrity of the bait.
The fall is the deal, though. You don't want to go heavy because...
Well, it would at least give you that gliding action down there with a different profile besides like an ice jig.
Yeah, like once you get down there, you can pop it.
Yeah.
You get it down. Yeah, you're right. A heavy one at depth, vertical.
Might be coming.
Okay.
Like Johnny Schultz, who is an Ozarks guy, is very much wanting a heavier version for more of that forward-facing Demiki style kind of fishing.
Yeah,
it's coming.
Okay, there's definitely a place for that. That's exciting, man. That's cool. I'm gonna pick some of those up, try it around. What else we got on here? I'm gonna back up just a hair. Saw Rich was on here. I don't know if he's still on here. What's up, Rich? Good to see you on here. Yeah, I've been a fan of that stupid tube for the last 3 or 4 years. I know that's something that's been up north for a long time, but
longer than that, though, bud.
Has it been stupid tube? Has it been?
it's been like since 14
10
when we
years probably
started.
then.
Yeah, 10 years that we've been
Time
fishing.
flies. I guess it has been 10 years.
It's been a while, but I almost feel like it's actually faded away more so in the last couple of years. Like it was kind of hot. It was kind of hot. And now I feel like it's not talked about nearly as much.
Well, it got like when we found out about it, it was pretty under wraps for around the region at least. And then it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then, like you said, it just petered out. Like,
yeah.
And even in my boat too, I stopped throwing it I bet I didn't throw it for a year or two.
Well, the downside is
it catches
a lot of grass though.
Yeah, it's a little tricky around grass because of the line tie and just the way that the line tie sits on that.
Yeah, but if you're fishing anything
rocky
wood, it's great.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, that's the hover rig is very similar to a tube fall. You know, you get a lot of that spiraling motion, and you can actually control it to a point to go from a spiraling motion to a straight glide in one direction. So if you apply a little bit of pressure, so if you let it fall on a slack line, it will do more of your 360 circles like a tube. If you do a controlled slack where you pick up kind of on the slack, you'll take it out of that spiral to the point where it'll just glide in one direction. So you can actually, like, I'm not going to sit here and say I've got it completely figured out, but you can very much control how you get that bait to fall.
Got a couple.
What, like a steak jerky J? We'll do. Oh, okay.
We'll do 360s
on the hover rig.
I guess he's.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I haven't fished the double wide beavers. Never.
That might be good on that.
I mean, that works. That'd be hella glide. I mean, just.
Yeah, it works well. Like the Depths bull flat, another real wide flat bait.
Well, there's a lot of those JDM baits that are coming out that are just super, super flat, right?
Yeah, it can glide. It can glide for days with some of them, like to the point it almost like it actually. So I love fishing it for bedding fish, but I don't like fishing it for bedding fish that I can see, because you know it's a lot of times with bedding fish you can pop the bait and get them to eat it, but you go to pop the stupid thing and sometimes it goes 2 feet this way or 2 feet that way, and you're like, no, I can't do this right now. Like it's doing what it's supposed to do, but it's not ideal for what I want.
It's almost too much controlled. It's not controlled chaos at that point, right? It's just chaos.
Yeah, I mean that's honestly, in my opinion, what triggers most fish to bite is the more erratic motion you can impart into your bait, whether it's a chatterbait and you're ripping it out of grass, or it's a crankbait and you're deflecting it off a stump. Those are the things that get the fish to bite. So if your bait will impart some sort of unusual action, that's going to trigger the strike. So it's what you want out of your baits. It's just one of those things. If you're trying to control your bait to do a specific thing, it's so erratic that you can't necessarily say, I'm going to get it to deflect off this, because it may go the other way.
So you were a big fan of that Rapala bait with I'm trying to think of the name of it, the scatter wrap.
Scatter wrap?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I actually have had a lot of good luck with the scatter wrap. You know, I think it's kind of the same sort of thing. The reason people like the old wiggle warts, you get that really good erratic hunting action out of it. And it's just like up here a little bit, up here. And it's just, you know, the more a bait changes direction, the more chance you have of triggering a fish to bite it.
Yep. I would agree with that. I noticed that so much on shooting video when I'm going back and I'm doing my fish catches. I'd say like 50% of the time when I catch a fish, I'm doing something different with my bait, just changing directions, or I slow the reel handle down, or I do a little short rod twitch that I don't even realize I'm doing it while I'm fishing. But you go back and watch the fish catch clips, and that's exactly what's happened. Just changing direction, doing something different.
I mean, it's the same thing with, you know, even if you're not moving the rod, just by changing your retrieve speed with your reel handle, you can impart different action. And that's, you know, I stress it a lot of times on my YouTube channel that you really want to just change speed, change direction, change movements in some form or fashion. Because the more times you can do that, the more I think you'll increase the number of bites you get throughout the day.
You ever tried to rig it backwards, or will it backglide?
I can't say I do that, but I don't know why it wouldn't work if you wanted it to backglide. I'm sure you could do it.
Yeah, that'd be ideal for docks that have floats that are sitting on the water, maybe.
Yep.
I'm trying to think how that would work, because I don't know if that would work or not, because your line ties and your pull point's in the same spot. It's not going to go.
You'd have to have a longer bait probably and go
Well,
in.
You went on a Cinco and you went to the other side, and it's just a Cinco.
Then you could put an L weight. You could add an L weight to it.
Yeah,
I guess. I don't know. This stuff's kind of.
I mean, if you rigged it backwards, it should technically slide away. You would have to give it some line.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you would be preventing it from going. But it probably. I haven't done it.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing sure it would work out with is the flying lure 2.0. So, I mean,
a lot of people have said I've knocked off the flying lure, and I can tell you there was not any part of me that thought about the flying lure while we were doing this.
That was a good bait, man. It was a good bait. It was a made for TV gimmick bait, but
what was the other
actually the banjo minnow that that worked too.
That was a good one too.
Yeah, just a nose hook minnow. How do you get followers on a big glide bait to commit?
Oh man, I wish I knew how to do it every time.
Dynamite.
I'm just gonna go back to what I was just saying a minute ago. Like, I like to impart some sort of quick, erratic action to hopefully generate that fish to bite. In more cases than not, I feel like those fish generally are just interested in checking out what the heck that bait is, and are not going to bite. But in my experience, you have a much better shot at getting a follower to bite if you do something, some sort of quick movement, whether you twitch your rod tip, give a quick half reel handle turn, something along those lines is going to be your best bet at generating a follower to bite.
Sorry.
Have you ever put a Bridgeford pepperoni stick on a hover rig?
Oh, good. Hella bass. Rich, that sounds like a really good video idea for me. Yeah. I might do that. No, I have not tried it yet. The problem is I'd probably catch myself on that one.
Yeah. That's good stuff, man. The flying lure, yeah. What would you say the hook is on that hover rig? Like a medium wire hook?
Yeah, it's a medium wire hook. It's a mustad hook.
Yeah, good stuff, Rich. Appreciate that. Rich. That was actual laugh out loud material. Yeah. Have you thought any more about that blind bass that we talked about? Remember the blind bass that was really dark, the pigment?
Yeah. I've thought about it like 10 times. I think about that fish a lot, to be honest with you. So, I mean, I guess as a little background for the viewers, I caught a bass. Day 3, I caught one that was almost 4 pounds. That I say was blind in both eyes. Like, when you look, it had 2 completely white eyeballs that looked like the centers were pecked out. Like, it looked like a bird had pecked the eyeball, like the center of it out. So it was almost like the eyeballs looked like a white donut, if that makes sense. Like, there was a bulbous ring and then nothing in the center. And so like when I caught it, I was going down the bank, I saw a big long black object, and I had seen a lot. There were buffalo up spawning everywhere, and I was like, this is just a buffalo. But I'm going down the bank, and at this point I was kind of looking for spawners, kind of not, but there was nothing in front of me to throw at, and I didn't see anything that looked like a spawner. So I flipped my bait over probably a foot in front of the fish, and I popped it, and that fish just went right to it, ate it. And I almost didn't even set the hook, because I was like, oh, this is not a bass, right? Like, it's not a bass. And I'm like, screw it. So I kind of, if you watch the video, I kind of half-heartedly set the hook on it. And I'm like, oh, it's a catfish. I thought it was a flathead catfish. That's how dark it was. And then I was like, no, it's a dogfish. And then it turned at me and kind of came up and did a head shake. I'm like, oh my God, that's a bass. So I ended up, at that point, I kind of went into like game mode and grabbed the net and netted it. And, you could see, like, if you watch my YouTube video, you can see my surprise as to what it was. But I netted it. It was like the blackest bass I've ever caught. And the only thing so my reasoning on the color of the bass is if that fish was truly blind, how you can catch a bass that might be dark. You maybe catch it out of a grass flat and it's a dark bass. You put it in your live well, and by the time you weigh it in, it lightens up.
Mm-hmm.
My thinking is if that fish was completely blind, it's seen nothing but darkness, and therefore it turned its body dark. Now, I'm sure if any of you guys out there are, fisheries biologists or something, you probably have a better opinion on this. But my thought was if the fish is blind, it's seen nothing but darkness and therefore changed like its color to being pretty much dark, black, jet black. And, I was concerned when I caught it, it kind of stunk a little bit, had a little bit of a sore on it. But it honestly, by the time I weighed it in, it actually had lightened up quite a bit, which kind of takes away from that theory of only seeing darkness, and was in absolutely, fantastic. It was in the same condition all my other fish was in. So it was a really crazy kind of catch scenario. And I just feel bad for that fish because his eyes were not good.
Well, so what was the water clarity that you got that fish in?
That was day 3. I don't know what the mile marker was, mile marker 50 or something like that. I was a ways 35, 40 miles upriver. So it was probably a foot of visibility somewhere in there.
Well, I mean, we go that spectrum, and fish usually get lighter, right? I mean, catch them in the mud and they're
it was
bleached out.
I mean, like I said, I could see a dark shadow going down the bank. Just like, everywhere I went on that lake, there were big black buffalo spawning. Yeah. So it was like you could see a big black shadow. And I just think back, like the only reason I pitched to it is because there was nothing else like up the bank that was enticing to me to make a cast to with my jig. So I just flipped it I led the fish, right? I flipped it in front of where that black shadow was going, and I popped it, and I felt thud, and I set the hook. And I would have bet you my tournament check that was a flathead catfish when I set the hook, because I kind of saw like the big mouth and how black and dark it was, and I was like, oh, it's a catfish. And then it was like, no, this is a bass.
That poor fish, he knew his home.
He got his eyes pecked out by
4 years. He knew exactly where every nook and cranny was on that bank, and then you jerked him out and drug him 35 miles away. He's never gonna know what
that's one of he won't know the difference. He can't tell.
Yeah, but he's gonna keep bumping into rocks and logs all day long.
Part of me wondered, like, do you think if that were a spawning fish, like, could a blue heron have pecked his eyes out? So maybe, like, he's up spawning. You got a blue heron that sees him on his bed, pecks an eye out, and the bass is there guarding his bed. So he comes back and gets another eyeball pecked out. Like, I don't know. I mean, when I saw him, he was swimming down the bank. So I don't feel like at all he was on a bed at that point, but I don't know. It was one of those scenarios, when things are going your way, like it went my way in that instance. And I was more than happy to have them.
They weren't sore. It wasn't recent a fresh injury.
No, it was very much, I would say healed over. There was not like any bleeding or pussiness. It looked like it had been that way for a while, but right. It didn't look good. It didn't. Yeah. I didn't enjoy looking at it and holding the fish. And but like I said, when I got to weigh in, his coloration was much better, much more normal looking, and he looked much healthier. I dumped some G juice and stuff in there, and that fish was it looked healthier when I let him go than it was when I caught him.
Right.
That's
usually my luck, though. I got to catch a half blind or a full blind fish to do well in a tournament.
They all weigh the same.
I think that's harder. That shows your talent. It's harder to catch those fish.
Exactly. And what we were kind of talking about, how that was total lateral line.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you're flipping weren't flipping a crankbait or something with rattles. I mean, I thought you said
that was that was a jig. That was a reach bit boss. So I mean, no noise, no rattle.
Yeah.
No, I mean nothing. I mean, it just the fish had no problem eating my bait. I can tell you that.
That was a complete reaction, maybe a little bit of scent, quick scent, and jumped all over.
They know what's up, man. I mean,
Uncle Ron says he's got some hover rigs on the way, so he's.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably order some next couple of days. I want to play around with those. They look pretty cool.
I'm gonna play around with them apparently on my desk, kind of like Matt does, and I might get to use them about July.
You're gonna get out in the water soon, man.
I got one more weekend, and then we got a weekend off. So, but my weekend off is Memorial Day. So,
okay. Yeah.
Fortunately, we live on we fish small lakes, so it'll be packed, but it won't be like a washing machine like Lake of the Ozarks would be.
No poker run.
No poker. Well, I mean 9-9 poker run, but
that's a whole different ball game.
So, man, you got to tell the story. You got to tell
it again.
Will you tell your story, the Sasquatch story?
Again?
Yeah.
You want it again?
I want to hear it. Well, because we got a bunch of people on here that have never heard it, and it's a good one. A really good one. I want to hear it one more time from the source.
Oh God.
If you're
hence the tattoo.
Yeah. You got some fresh ink. I think you need to know.
Yeah.
You need to know why you got the fresh ink. That's a fake arm.
Was your tattoo artist blind too?
I don't have it. I have no tattoos. I am not a tattoo guy. I mean, not that I have anything against it. That doesn't interest me at all. Especially not a Sasquatch on my forearm. Yeah. So the story is, I don't recall the exact year. I'm going to say 2013, something like that. So I live in central Wisconsin. I had my team partner, a good buddy of mine, stayed at my house. He came up from Madison, Wisconsin, stayed at my house, and then we drove up to the Hayward, Wisconsin area that was brought up earlier today.
Oh, okay.
And so that drives about 3 hours. We were going to the Chippewa Flowage for a tournament, and we got to probably an hour away. There's a town called Phillips, Wisconsin. It's just a little resort town, nothing, 1,000 people. And this is a route I take all the time because, like I said, my parents have a cabin up there, so I've got all the little shortcuts, logging roads, things like that. And
is this a blacktop, like 2-lane road?
Yeah, so yeah, it's a 2-lane blacktop road, but it's not like a painted off road, right? There's no center line, there's no rumble strips. I mean, it's a blacktop road, but it's like, you got two cars coming, you got to pass each other appropriately. You're not just flying by each other. And so I'm taking a shortcut around the town of Phillips, and I'm going on a couple of these small blacktop roads. It was probably about 5:30 in the morning, and we take a right turn onto another road, and as we take that right turn, both of us at the same time instantly go bear, right? Like, you see bear in Wisconsin, but there was a big black object in the middle of the road, like 100 yards up, right in the center of the road. And at the same time, when we said bear, that object looked over its shoulder, got up on 2 legs, and bolted into the woods. But it only took like 2 or 3 steps. Like, I mean, it went from the center of the road into dense forest, like, snapping a finger fast. And so we drove past it, looking, didn't see anything. We drove for probably, it was a while, 15 minutes, something like that. Never said anything. And one of us, I don't even recall who it was. One of us goes, if I didn't know better, and the other one goes, Bigfoot. Like, we both were on the same wavelength. Neither of us give a crap about Bigfoot, right? Like, this is not anything that truly interests us. And it kind of became a joke of that tournament weekend. We went on, fished the tournament, won the tournament, drove home. And I remember like that Sunday night, I was talking to my ma, telling her about the tournament. And then I was like, oh, by the way, we saw something really weird, right? And kind of was like, if I didn't know better, it was Bigfoot. My ma's like, have there ever been sightings of Bigfoot in Wisconsin? Like, that's not something that we've ever really heard or talked about. And so my dumb ass goes on Google, starts Googling Bigfoot in Wisconsin. And the hotbed for Bigfoot sightings is Phillips, Wisconsin, the town I was driving around, so much so that they've nicknamed their sightings Big Phil is what they call them. Apparently, it's like a town mascot.
Okay.
So, and like St. Croix Rods Factory is not far north of there. And at the time, the owners of St. Croix have come out, I guess, and I've read some articles where they talked about seeing some crazy stuff, and it definitely is a hotbed for sightings. And so in my research, in my Googling, I came across the Bigfoot Researchers Organization, BFRO.com. You can go look up my sighting request if you'd like, or my sighting report. And I filed a sighting because I was like, I don't really care, but maybe somebody cares, right? Like maybe this interests somebody. And so I wrote up a report, and a couple of days later, this is when I was working at the Chicago Board of Trade as a financial investigator. I got a call from a guy on my cell phone, which, I didn't know the number, so I didn't answer it. So he left a message, and he's like, hey, this is, and I don't remember the guy's name. Hey, this is Mike calling from the BFRO. We got your report. It's awesome. The best one we've had in years. I'm the guy for the Wisconsin territory. I want to go camp out. I'm going to spend a couple of weeks up there looking for it. I just need you to verify, a couple of things you said in the report. So please give me a call back. I have nothing going on. Seriously, I have nothing going on. Call me whenever you want. I remember listening to this in my cubicle, and I broke out laughing. And like within 15 minutes, I had like 15 of my coworkers around, like, and we're playing the voicemail over and over, and everyone's laughing like, well, yeah, he's a Bigfoot researcher. He's got nothing going on,
Well, the fact that it was like, that's my assignment, I cover that area. Yeah, but I don't got anything going on today.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally, I mean, I had that voicemail for years, and then at some point I got a new phone, and it like didn't carry over. But I wish I had the voicemail, because there were so many times I'd play it and it just made me laugh, because he's like, seriously, I have nothing going on. Call me whenever. And I was like, no shit. But so, I thought I was kind of done with it at that point. And then it was several years later, I was driving to a tournament, I think on Beaver Lake. I want to say this was like 2017, something like that. And I got a call, another voicemail from a woman who is the executive director or the producer or something. I have the email still, because she emailed me as well, from Finding Bigfoot, the TV show. They wanted me to go on because they were coming up to the Wisconsin area, and they're like, yours is the best sighting in years, blah, blah, blah. Are you interested? So I didn't respond. She sent me an email, and then she called again. And finally, I'm like, I better talk to this woman, right? Because I'm kind of curious. I'm not really interested, but kind of curious, because maybe they're going to pay me, or maybe,
Right.
maybe it's a sponsor opportunity, blah, blah, blah.
Of course.
So the next time she called, I talked to her, and I was like, so a couple of questions. Is it paid? No, it's not paid. This is like your, 10 minutes of fame. I'm like, I'm not looking for that. This isn't the 10 minutes of fame I want.
Yeah.
I'm like, but if I can I wear whatever I want? And she's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, could I wear say a Bridgeford Foods shirt or, you know, a sponsor shirt. And she's like, yeah, as long as it's not, you know, something that would be like, you know, have bad words or anything on it. And I was like, okay, yeah. So she's like, and I was like, well, could I say I saw him running through the woods with a bag of Bridgeford jerky? And she's like, well, is that what you saw? And I was like, no, that's not what I saw. But can I make a joke about it? And she's like, we would rather you not joke around about this. And I was
This is serious stuff, Mr. Stefan.
Yeah. And I remember I reached out to a buddy of mine who used to own Dirty Jigs at the time. And I was like, what do you think about this? Like, I could wear a Dirty Jig shirt. He's like, 100%, you have to do it. This is awesome. You got to do it. But I don't want you wearing a Dirty Jig shirt. And I was like, so you want to do this just to make fun of me, right? And he's like, 100%, I will never let you live this down. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing this. I call and they were like, well, you can have your buddy who saw it too come on. And I called him up. I'm like, are you interested at all in this? He's like, absolutely not. Like, I know we saw something really screwed up, but he's like, I'm not going on TV. So yeah, it just kind of has been one of those things that popped up quite a bit. Oh man, you know, at this point it's more of a joke, like with respect to, you know, like the Bigfoot on the back, you know, that was a advertising sign that a buddy of mine gave me. And I get people send me Bigfoot shirts all the time. Like I probably have 3 or 4 shirts that say something along the lines of like world's greatest hide and seek player. And it's a picture of Bigfoot, you know, like I have so many random shirts that people have given me. And, you know, I part of me says, I wish I hadn't seen what I saw. The other part of me is like, man, I feel like I know what I saw, but I don't really believe what I saw. Like, I mean, it's just, I've never seen anything move like that. I've never seen anything look like that. And, you know, whether somebody is up in the Phillips, Wisconsin area playing a big joke by being in a costume or something, I just like, as much as I want to say that's what's happening, I don't think a human could move like what I saw.
Well, okay, so what time was that again?
I'm going to say it was probably 5:30 in the morning.
Okay.
But it was a summer, you know, roughly summer tournament. And, you know, 5:30 in Wisconsin is like not dark. I mean, it's, you know, our sunrise will be like 4:30 at that point. So, I mean, there was definite good visibility. You know, it was still kind of twilight, but it wasn't like you couldn't see more than 100 yards. It was, you could see, you know, I could see as far as I could at the time. You know, I could see 2 miles down the road probably. It was I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know.
It wasn't something you caught in the headlights flying by.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't even like there was. I don't. I mean, it jumped into the woods. We drove by it looking for it, and it was gone. I mean, it was the woods in that area are so dense you can't see more than 15 feet into the woods.
Right.
So it wasn't.
We got a winner, folks. We got a winner. So you can quick guess. And Nick, get a hold of me on Facebook, Gabe Montgomery Fishing, or 10 Horse Monty, or Instagram, 10 Horse Monty 6. Send me your email, and I will send your information over to Baitworks, and you'll get a $25 gift card. Sorry to cut you off, man, but these numbers make him go cross-eyed. I mean, really, you know, it's like, it's a big world. There's a lot of stuff out there. And I mean, I can't write it off. I'd have to have a sighting or see something that I thought was it to convince me that it is a possibility, but I'd have to see it to believe it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, that's the part that bothers me. Like, I feel like there's a much better chance of there being like alien life form from another planet than I do Bigfoot right now. But I also saw something.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
So your buddy that was with you, is he, have you guys ever talked about this since then?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like
And
lots.
it's still the same story. You guys still remember it the same, pretty much.
100%. I mean, it was one of those things we both were paying close attention to what we were like to driving, because I mean, one, we were talking about, you know, practice and blah blah blah, but anytime you're driving twilight hours in Wisconsin, you're dealing with like thousands of deer, and you want to pay attention to, you know, all the deer that are running around. So if I got an extra spotter who can tell me if there's a deer somewhere, I'm more than happy to have it. And yeah, I mean, it was when we made that turn, both of us, bear, like, I mean, it was simultaneous. And then it went to like, what did we just like see? Like it was, yeah, dude. I mean, it was crazy. I don't know what I can't sit here and be like, I saw Bigfoot, because I feel like I'm very much a common sense guy. And like I said, I'm not a Bigfoot dude. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say Bigfoot's real, but I also feel like I think I saw Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, there's thousands and thousands. I mean, there's thousands of reports a year. Even if like 2% of those were something real, that means that it is, you know, that there is something out there. It's crazy. It's hard to believe.
I think about all those other 2,000 people. I'm like, they're all nut jobs. And then I'm like, but I'm one of them now. Like, that's the problem. It's like, I don't know.
I'm in the club.
One of us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fun story to tell, because there's more, like, there's so much more has happened since the actual sighting. Like, there's been so many different little parts to it. So it's a fun, entertaining story, but like, I tell it and I'm like, what? But what did I see? Like, I wish I had that finite answer to it.
You'll never know. You'll never know.
Never know.
I appreciate you telling that story. I know you told it on here a while back.
You know,
it's a good story.
I think you guys were the first one to get it, actually.
I didn't know that you had that sighting. Honest to God, when we had you on, so the Sasquatch giveaway thing is just something we'd been doing for a while.
Yeah.
And we just ask all our guests. And I had no idea that there was any connection. And when you told me that story, I was blown away. I'm like, are you kidding me? Because you thought we were messing with you, I think.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
The funny thing, though, like, we did the Bass Talk Live. I did an episode with like Brandon Polinick and Miles Burrow and Matt Pangrack. And we all had different stories. But the funny thing is, like, so many of us that spend so much time in the outdoors have seen weird things. Like, whether it's a Bigfoot or UFO type thing or whatever it is, it's like, you know, maybe there is more of that stuff out there. And if, you know, the more time you spend out in that type of environment, the more you have a chance of coming across it. Like, I don't know. I don't. Maybe it's all, we're just so damn tired from fishing all day where you hallucinate. I don't know. But I don't know. I really don't know, guys. I wish I could sit here and be like, dang, I saw Bigfoot, or I didn't see Bigfoot, but I saw something. And I can tell you this. I know for a fact I did not see a black bear get up and walk on two legs.
Yeah, I think it's something where you'd have to see it a couple more times just to really solidify, maybe, because there, you know, apparently there's people that
have multiple sightings.
They have multiple sightings in their life, and then by the you know, the second or third sighting, they're convinced that it is what it is. But you know, when you just see something one time,
I don't want to have another sighting.
That's what I was just. I don't want to have one. Period. Like, I don't want to experience that, because I don't want it to ruin something for me. Right.
So I'm not.
Right. Yeah. If I know that's
the problem, dude. Like, I'm not a hunter. Like, as much as I think I would love that, I don't. I'm so consumed with fishing, I don't have time to go sit in the woods for deer. But like, we've got a little bit of land at my house. Like, I love to kind of just walk through the woods, whether that's looking for like morel mushrooms or, you know, I'm an outdoorsy guy. I love that stuff. I get the willies if I'm by myself. after that. Like I never had that. Now it's like I don't enjoy being like deep in the woods by myself from that. Like, so from an experience standpoint, it's something that hasn't necessarily been a positive for me, because I do feel like it makes me really think about where I'm at, and I don't feel comfortable, if I'm out in the middle of nowhere by myself.
Yeah, if you listen to, there's several podcasts out there that are Sasquatch Bigfoot related. Many of these hunters that have been hunting since they were kids and they're in their 40s or 50s, they have some sort of sighting, and that's it. They hang it up. They never go out in the woods again because it freaks them out. And
don't ever listen
sad,
to one of those on the way to the lake early in the morning, or on the way
like that's the thing. I there's since I've told the story, I've had several people, I don't remember the names. So there's some guy out there on YouTube where they're like, go listen to him. He reports all these stories. And I remember like going and listening to a couple of them, being like, this hits kind of close to home. Like I don't really want to listen to these stories because it kind of brings me back to that whole thing. And dude, it gives me the willies. And like,
all right, so
I am sincere when I say I wish I had not seen what I saw. Like that's how I feel.
So the next time we have him on, we have to have, it's not going to be the Sasquatch giveaway because he's getting tired of telling the story. It's got to be like the blind black bass giveaway or something like that.
Mix it up.
Yeah, we got to hear the blind bass story.
Well, I tell you what. So here's a challenge for everybody that's listening, and maybe some of you folks have done this. But next time you're out late at night, you're out just cruising around on a road or something, stop in the middle of the road, shut off all your lights, and roll your windows down, and shut your car off, and see how long you can sit there. And that's in an area that it's hard to do. I scared the crap out of my girls not to. I got two daughters they just turned 15, and we did this about a month and a half ago. We drove out towards Pocahontas, way out in the country, and it was only like 10 o'clock at night, and we shut the car off and sat there. We sat there for 10 seconds.
Yeah,
and it's scary. So imagine being in the woods, the sun's coming up, and here comes this whatever it is. Well, you're never going to go back out there again.
Well, I know as a hunter, like that's bliss to me. Like dead quiet morning, whether it's in the duck woods or the deer woods. The duck woods, you're hearing ducks, start waking up in the morning. You hear them coming overhead, but you get into certain areas and the silence is overwhelming, right? Like you're in the parking lot at Cedar 5 years ago before they had a light at Pomona.
Oh, I've been,
and you're the only one in there, and it's pitch black, dark. There's not a light for miles, and you hear like,
yes.
What was that?
10 o'clock,
my ass in the truck, and let's go.
11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, after you've been fishing for 3 or 4 hours in the dark, and you come back to the boat ramp, and there's not even any water on the parking lot because everybody's been gone that long, and you're sitting out there trying to put your ratchet straps on and relax. You can't even hardly do it. You're like, you're doing this, and there's a lot going on out there.
Now you got me. I'm on the way home tonight. Got to go out through the park, and I'll just shut everything.
Try it, man. Let me know. Give me a call. I'll come pick you up.
I won't. I'm not doing that.
All right, let's wrap this up, man. One more question. Aaron wants to know what circuits are you fishing this year?
Yeah, right now, just the Major League Fishing Invitationals.
Right, and you're sitting in second place in the AOI. That's awesome.
Yeah, second place, 4 down, 2 to go.
You feeling good about the next couple tournaments?
The Potomac's a place that I've had some good tournaments. I've had some bad tournaments. So yeah, it sets up good for my style of fishing. So I feel confident. It's just not, if you look at my career stats, I'm a pretty consistent angler, and that's one place where I've had some hiccups. So if I can get through that with a good finish, I'll feel real good. Because the last one's at La Crosse on the Mississippi River, which is only a few hours from the house. It's not like my home water, but I have good history there. I've got a really good track record in national level tournaments there. So right now I'm concentrating on the Potomac.
Gotcha. So how many people move on to the BPT, like the top, however many in the Invitationals?
Top 8.
Top 8.
Top 8, but they do not roll down. So if there's a BPT angler in the top 8, they do not roll down. So right now, Michael Neal and Dakota Ebert are in the top 8 as well. So they'll take the top 6 non BPT guys.
That's kind of harsh, man.
I mean, it's how they've set it up at this point. So you got to deal with it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, man, we'll wrap this up. Appreciate you coming on here and hanging out with us.
Yeah, man.
I love it. Yeah, it's good. It's good conversation. This is nice and laid back. We're just kind of talking about whatever. I know we had a topic and we sort of skirted around that topic, but
what was the topic tonight?
It was how to be a more consistent angler.
Oh,
and
what was the question you said I might not want to talk about?
I don't remember. I think I was talking about the Sasquatch story.
Okay.
I thought maybe you might not want to, go through that.
No, I'm good with that. I didn't know what you wanted to get at with that. I was like, oh boy.
No, that was it. That was all it was. Yeah. So any shout outs or anything before we wrap this sucker up?
No, guys. I love being on here. I appreciate you guys having me on, and whenever you need me to come on, I'd be more than happy to come on.
Yeah, man, it's fun, dude. It's fun. Good luck pulling for you. The BPT, man, that's gonna be.
We got 2 more to go.
You got 2 more. Yeah, you're right.
No celebrating yet.
Let's not jinx it, man. So we're pulling for you. Thanks for coming on here, and we'll have you back sometime down the road, man, for sure.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
All right. We do this every Monday. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you all next time.